Good evening. Just a little sound check. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, June 8th. Hatsqualin, Yuslutluk, Squamish, Oimeo. We are meeting tonight on the ancestral unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. We are still within the 215 hours of remembrance, so I just want to say that our hearts go out to the members of Squamish Nation and other Indigenous people as of what was uncovered in Kamloops, and that we have recommitted to our actions around truth and reconciliation in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ministerial Order M192. We are getting towards the end of having to read this out loud because we'll be able to return to in-person meetings. But tonight we cannot because of current public health orders. And so the district is ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability at this meeting by the following means. This meeting is being live streamed. A video of this meeting will be available on the district's website for viewing on an on-demand basis. And the meeting is open to the public for electronic participation via WebEx. Would someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are meeting electronically, and so just a reminder to council and the public that when a council member disconnects or reconnects, if they could let me know so this can be recorded in the minutes. Council members who wish to speak can raise their hand if they're connected by video, or simply say chair if for some reason they're connected by audio only. With respect to a vote, council members are only required to state the nay vote. No statement is required if the member is in favor. Council, public, staff, unless it is your turn to speak, please keep your computer or telephone on mute. We do expect council to be involved in and participate in the meeting. If you're having technical difficulties tonight, council, please text our corporate officer. If we're having technical difficulties on our side, we will recess for up to 10 minutes and get everyone reconnected again. We've had many public hearings electronically so far. They generally run really smoothly, and we're pretty good at fixing technical issues. So if we do run into a technical issue, I just ask everyone for their patience this evening. We do have 3 public hearings tonight. So with that, the first of our public hearings is the Oceanfront Phase Development Agreement, Official Community Plan, and Rezoning updates. So I will read a statement, and then we'll have a presentation from staff, and then we will open up to the public and to council. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act requirements to allow the public to present and provide submissions to council respecting the proposed bylaws, which this evening are District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw Amendment Bylaw for Oceanfront Amendments number 2796/2021, District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw Amendment Bylaw for Oceanfront Housekeeping Amendments number 2797/2021, and District of Squamish Phase Development Agreement Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 2812/2021. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether in speaking in favor or against the proposed bylaw amendments. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to the matters contained in the proposed bylaws. Please note that the public hearing is not an opportunity for members of the public to have their questions answered by staff or council. Any questions or points of clarification can be directed to staff by contacting the planning department. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district website. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations. Council is here to listen and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaws with the public or each other during the public hearing. Up to and as part of this hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the staff report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been added to the electronic agenda and to the electronic public hearing package available on the district website. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by viewing the electronic agenda. Submissions will be uploaded by staff as they are received. I'll now ask the planning department to outline what the bylaws are proposing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you see my presentation?
We can, might just get you to increase your volume a little bit.
Okay, let me see if I can speak louder. A little bit better?
Better, thank you.
Of course, thank you. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the District of Squamish, and tonight I'm here to present 3 bylaws for public hearing. These bylaws amend the Oceanfront Phase Development Agreement, Zoning Bylaw, and Official Community Plan Oceanfront Sub-Area Plan. These amendments are the result of the proposed expansion of district-owned roads throughout the oceanfront. These changes were first introduced to Council in March of 2021 at a Committee of the Whole meeting and received first and second reading on May 18th, 2021. There you go. So the oceanfront sub-area planning process was completed in 2010. The lands were rezoned to the CD69 zone as the sale of the lands to the developer was occurring, along with the negotiation and adoption of the phase development agreement. The first development permit was issued in 2016 and was amended to permit a second DP for carbon engineering that development in 2020. In 2018, a narrow suite of amendments was given third reading by Council but was not adopted. This suite of amendments also contains those amendments. Tonight's application is made of 3 principal sections: zoning, official community plan, and phase development agreement amendments. The official community plan contains the sub-area plan. This slide shows which category each of the changes falls within. And then again, tonight's bylaws cover 2 different extents. So the sub-area plan contained within the OCP covers the entire geographical area of the Oceanfront Peninsula, which you can see from the top image on the slide. The zoning and phase development agreement, however, encompasses a smaller area, as shown on the lower image. The zoning of that land generally aligns with the sub-area plan, though some differences can be seen. Changes to the PDA and zoning only impact the area highlighted in the zoning image. The first bylaw that I'll introduce tonight is bylaw number 2796, which seeks to make an amendment to Appendix N of the official community plan. The first change is to remove the employment cap in section 7.6.1.2.2, which is implementation of the sub-area plan. It should be noted that this change would include land that is currently not zoned CD69, but is captured by the sub-area plan. This would permit more industrial-oriented and office uses on the Oceanfront Peninsula. The other change to the sub-area plan includes updates to the floor area ratios, FARs, and heights, where applicable in Schedule I, buildings and built forms. The primary changes to height reflect the 2018 changes, while the changes to floor area ratios reflect the adjustments to lot sizes following the dedication of public roads. The next bylaw that I'll introduce is the zoning bylaw amendment number 2797. There are several changes proposed to the CD69 zone. These changes are to offset the gross floor area or parking loss from the dedication of private land to public roads, to facilitate construction with mass timber, to align setbacks with new road cross sections and planning best practices, and to define commercial space. Staff will walk through these in some detail. Staff proposed adding the Youth Education and Training Institution to Block B and Block C1. These changes were approved by Council as part of the 2018 suite of changes, but again were never adopted. The Oceanfront sub-area plan identifies Block E as the Education and Institutions block. The block was created with an understanding that the block's mix of institutional buildings and student and staff housing would create a complementary bridge between the employment lands to the south and the residential lands to the north. And adding this use to blocks B and C1 furthers that bridge. The maximum residential gross floor area for the CD69 zone is secured overall in the zone. The proposed changes to floor area ratio in this suite of amendments is, with the exception of Block B, not intended to increase the overall developable gross floor area for the oceanfront, but rather make sure that the developer could still achieve the same GFA. The dedication of private land to public roads results in a loss of developable area. The parcel sizes of the blocks affected by the road dedication shrink. The proposed changes to the floor area ratio are shown in this table. Block B does, however, include a true increase overall FAR employment space, which we'll discuss in the next slide. So as it relates to Block B, it's proposed to increase the FAR from 1.0 to 2.2. This increase represents increases approved in 2018, loss of land due to public roads, and an additional increase of employment space. This amendment also includes a hard cap of 8,000 square meters to the overall residential GFA in Block B. This ensures that as the employment GFA increases, it does not also provide an increase to the potential residential GFA, which is currently set to 25% of the overall employment space in the zone. CD69 sets a maximum amount of commercial use on the oceanfront lands at 27,666 square meters, and staff have included a definition of commercial to the CD69 zone to limit it to ground floor retail-like uses. The applicant proposes revised setbacks to blocks A, B, C, C1, and G. The setbacks in blocks A through C1 align with the new road cross-sections, as the new road dedication and cross-sections largely secure the extent of the public realm. Best practices indicate that commercial uses should not be too far set back because they encourage a lively public realm. The higher setback for residential space aligns with policies within the sub-area plan and best practices that speak to creating a public-private interface, as well as providing some at-grade private space in the front setback. This is the driver for the requested changes to Block G, which is largely untouched by the revised road cross-sections and increased dedication of public roads. The developer is exploring building much of the oceanfront utilizing mass timber. When replacing steel, mass timber is less carbon-intensive material, estimated to reduce carbon emissions between 15 and 20%, while also sequestering carbon. Construction using mass timber does require more height to accommodate a wider floor system of 3 feet per floor, while traditional construction would only require 1 foot. Staff proposed incentivizing using mass timber by implementing a height bonus to accommodate the additional height required to build with mass timber. The proposed height bonus also includes a requirement to provide overheight commercial space on the ground floor where commercial and employment uses are provided. The conversion of private roads to public roads discounts the developer's ability to count off-street parking stalls on roads towards their final parking count. This table above outlines the net loss of parking by each block. This parking reduction will be shared across developments within the same block. The oceanfront does not qualify for the lower downtown parking standards, and some parking will be provided on-street. The final bylaw that I'll review are the changes to the phase development agreement. Several changes are proposed to this agreement, including a commitment to ensuring that 80% of all residential GFA is powered using only renewable energy sources, a phased out approach to on-street parking within the village, updates to the subdivision and development control bylaw, including new tree standards, new lighting standards, and new road cross-sections, updates to the zoning bylaw, including replacing it with the 2018 version, and integrating bylaw number 2797. Updates to the required infrastructure, and replacing the flood hazard covenant and report. The trigger for this housekeeping amendment was the increased dedication of roads to the districts. So previously only the main road, which is outlined in red on the slide, was to be district owned and/or public road. The yellow roads on this map represent an increase of 942 meters of district roads, specifically a road through the village, and roads to the Oceanfront Park parking between blocks B, C, and E, which are the primary education and employment blocks. The dedication of these roads is accompanied by new road cross-sections that ensure that these spaces meet best practices in terms of active transportation, accommodation, sidewalks, and landscaping. There are 3 primary benefits to public roads. first, minimum standards. So Strata roads only need to meet minimum standards for fire access, and all road standards would be negotiated at each development permit. By making these roads public, ensures that they are constructed with substantial room for bicycle travel, pedestrians, and landscaping. Maintenance, so public roads will benefit from regular district-led maintenance, whereby Strata roads are maintained by a Strata to a variable degree. And finally, public access. By designating these additional roads as public roads guarantees public access. Strata roads could designate when and how roads are accessed and restrict activities customary on public roads, reducing the public benefits considerably. To inform the community per policy, the application was posted to the district's development showcase, and 2 development signs have been posted at the site. Staff received 1 comment with a public information meeting request. The comment noted that it was difficult to understand what was happening. Staff offered more information and offered opportunities for conversation. A public information meeting was held for a period of 30 days in March. No comments were received. Public notification procedures were followed, including notification to properties within 100 meters. Public hearing notices were placed on in two issues of the Squamish Chief, the May 27th and June 4th edition, meeting legislative requirements. Following the results of the public hearing, staff recommend Council consider giving bylaws number 2796, 2797, and 2018-12 third reading, and that prior to adoption of the phase development agreement bylaw, approval from the Inspector of Municipalities and completion of the dedication of new district-owned roads be completed. And thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Fletcher. So I will go to council and see if there's any questions. Councilor Stoner?
Thank you, through the chair. Just one clarifying question, Ms. Fletcher. On your slide around parking, you said that there was a net loss of parking spaces. I was wondering if you can clarify if that's a true reduction in the number of parking stalls, or if that's just a result in the way that they're being calculated, because on-street parking used to count because they were private roads, but now that they're public roads, there's no, like, that parking stall will still be there, but it's not being counted as off-street parking.
Correct. Yeah, through the mayor. So the second part of that is correct. The parking stalls will still technically be there, but can no longer be counted towards the development because they're no longer on Strata roads.
Thank you.
Other questions? I had a question, Ms. Fletcher, just for clarity. In Block B, the lot coverage is anywhere from 70 to 85%, but does that still leave room for us to do like mid-block cut-throughs and still pay attention to some of the public realm and the amenities that would be required to support those business areas?
Through the mayor, yes. So the lot coverage does vary. It hasn't changed the master planning, the extent to which they expected the buildings to cover that. So there are still opportunities there for the mid-block connections that were contemplated in the sub-area planning process.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any further hands from council. I'll go out to the public. So details to participate via telephone or WebEx are displayed on the screen. Do that. For those who have logged in from your computer or are watching the live stream of the meeting, instructions are also included on the district website. So in order to get on the speakers list, if you're on the telephone, please raise your hand, so to speak, by dialing *3. Or if you're connected via WebEx on your computer or cell phone app, you open the participant panel and click on the hand icon. Please note that there will be a moderator who will communicate with speakers. When it is your turn to speak, you will receive a voice prompt if you're on the telephone, or a dialog box if you're on WebEx. Please remember to put your hand down after you have finished speaking, so just *3 again on the phone, or clicking the hand icon again on WebEx. Please note that due to the most recent public health orders, the option for in-person participation for public hearings is currently not available. We ask that you please commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address or neighborhood. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council in order that everyone has an opportunity to speak. If you've already spoken and wish to speak again, to provide more or new comments, please raise your hand once again after I've indicated that speakers will be offered additional speaking opportunities. So I will turn it over to the moderator to see if there's any hands raised. Star 3 on the telephone or raise your hand in the participant panel on WebEx.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. We do have some hands up. I would like to remind you not to put your hands up unless you want to speak to this particular bylaw, this particular public hearing. We will get to everyone. The first person we have on the line is on WebEx, and that's Carlos. Carlos, could you please state your name and address for the record? And you have 5 minutes to address council. And you can go ahead, please.
Hi, Carlos, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Awesome. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carlos Avarse. My address is 2193 Crumpet Woods Drive in Squamish, BC, and I'm the Director of Development at Matthews West. So I'll be speaking on behalf of the proponent tonight. Before I speak to the amendment, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight that a few months ago, we launched a new website for the Oceanfront Squamish project, which is oceanfrontsquamish.com. And that website will be a great resource for the community to follow what's going on down on site. We'll also continue to push information out via the district's web blasts and our Facebook page just to make sure everyone's staying safe and able to enjoy our site as much as possible. The housekeeping rezoning amendment that's being presented tonight is the culmination of a number of years between our company and District of Squamish staff. And the Oceanfront Squamish project, which is guided by the Oceanfront Sub-Area Plan, represents the results of a decades-long community engagement process with the citizens of Squamish. And I can speak for everyone on our team when I say that we're incredibly proud to be the company working on this project, and that I am personally elated to see the increase of activity on site. We spent the last 5 years working through detailed master planning, engineering, and design in order to make this community's vision a reality. And so to that, I'd like to highlight the work done by Elaine Naseby, Dave Morrow, and Jesse Fletcher on this file to pull all of these detailed updates together in a cohesive package that, while it's lengthy, is fairly easy to understand. And it really is true to the intent of the sub-area plan and the phase development agreement. As you'll see by the schedules provided as part of this amendment, we reviewed a number of detailed aspects of this site, all with an eye to improve upon the strong foundation that was created by that sub-area plan. When we got into the nitty-gritty of the development, down to the centimeter in some cases, when we talked about some of the public streets and how that space is allocated. So the results of this are a zoning bylaw now that aligns with the overall master plan that we completed for the site, creating a really clear path forward to development. I just like to say that the process of getting to this mutual agreement on this package was really collaborative. And I truly believe that the outcomes of this process were more and better than if we had tackled this in isolation. So just wanted to share those thoughts with you and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Mayor Elliott, there's no more hands for this bylaw at the moment.
Thank you. Again, if you want to speak to the Oceanfront suite of bylaws, it is star 3 on the telephone or in the participant panel on WebEx. You can raise your hand. Council, I will go back to you, see if you have any questions. Not seeing any. Terry, do we have any raised hands?
No speakers online.
Okay. If there are no further speakers, and I have asked council if they need any further information, didn't see any hands, then I will now ask 3 times, and this is a requirement of public hearing, if there's anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. So for the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission on the Oceanfront bylaws? For a second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? And for the third and final time, Is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission on the Oceanfront bylaws this evening? Seeing no speakers, please note that council members are not permitted to receive any further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. So this means we can't speak to you out in the community or receive emails or phone calls on any of these bylaws until a decision on the bylaws has been made. Any and all communication from this point forward must be channeled through to staff. If there are no further speakers, I declare the hearing closed. Thank you very much for your submissions. Council, we're just going to take a 5-minute recess between each of the hearings, just so you can get up and stretch. So we will come back at 6:35. Are we live? Great. Thanks, everyone. We're having some audio issues here, so we think we fixed that. Everyone hear me okay? Great. All right, so welcome back. For those of members of the public tuning in, there are actually 3 public hearings tonight. We have done the first one on the Oceanfront development. We are now on to the second public hearing, which is a District of Squamish zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw for university definition and Amblepath Strata Lot 1 use clarifications, number 2808, 2021. Following this public hearing will be the next public hearing about marine zoning. For people to speak, only raise your hand if you want to speak to the university definition and clarification. Otherwise, we'll get to marine zoning after that. So I have another statement to read just to open up this hearing. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act to allow the public to present and to provide support respecting the proposed bylaw. And that is District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2200-2011 bylaw, university definition and Amblepath Strata Lot 1 use clarification, number 2808-2021. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether speaking in favor or against the proposed zoning amendment. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Please note that the public hearing is not an opportunity for members of the public to have their questions answered by staff or by council. Any questions or points of clarification can be directed to staff by contacting the planning department. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district website. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations and submissions. Council is here to listen and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the public or each other during the public hearing. Up to and as part of this public hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the staff report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been added to the electronic agenda and to the electronic public hearing package available on the district website. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by viewing the electronic agenda. Submissions will be uploaded by staff as they are received. I'll now ask the planning department to outline what the bylaw is proposing. Over to you, Mr. Gunn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a, oh, there we go, share. I'll just share my presentation. I have a brief presentation to share with Council. Good evening, my name is Matt Gunn. I'm a planner for the District of Squamish. Tonight I'm presenting the University Definition and Amblepath Strata Lot 1 Use Clarification Bylaw. Staff have proposed an update to District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200. The update bylaw number 2808 is intended to clarify permitted uses. Bylaw 2808 addresses uses in the Amblepath strata and in the university subarea. The first part of bylaw 2808 is related to Quest University. The intention of this bylaw is to better align the zoning with the official community plan, specifically Schedule P, the Sea to Sky University Subarea Plan. To improve alignment, staff initially proposed that the university definition be updated to reference the institution's degree granting authorization characteristics as depicted on the screen. This definition was considered by council and the public at a public hearing on March 23rd. At the March 23rd public hearing, council carried motions to rescind second reading of bylaw 2808, to amend the university definition included in the bylaw and give the bylaw second reading again. The new definition for university further clarified the legislative authority and the degree granting characteristics of the university use. The bold text that's on screen represents the updated language. This definition is the one that is included in bylaw 2808, which is being considered at today's public hearing. In response to the public hearing, staff and council have received correspondence from legal counsel for the owner of the Quest University lands. That letter is included in the agenda. The second part of bylaw 2808 is related to Amblepath, Strata Lot 1, where the platypus daycare is located. Staff proposed that the CD 35 zone be amended to prohibit single unit dwellings and home occupation offices on that lot, thus limiting permitted uses to daycare facilities and accessory uses. The intention is to clarify that Strata Lot 1 is intended for use as a daycare only. The amendment proposed at the public hearing is the same as the amendment proposed at the March 23rd public hearing. The owner of the building has responded in a phone discussion for the first public hearing with staff. They indicated that the only intended use for the property is in childcare. They note that there's a strong demand for the space for childcare. However, they did note that they would prefer not to lose future use options, but they did not provide written input to this public hearing. With regards to the public hearing requirements, the district and legislative engagement processes were followed. Notices of public hearing were published in the Squamish Chief. Following the public hearing, council may consider third reading for bylaw 2808.
Thank you, Mr. Gunn. I'll now ask council if they have any clarifying questions. Not seeing any, I will now go to the public. So details to participate via telephone or WebEx are displayed on the screen for those who have logged in from the computer or watching the live stream of the meeting. Instructions are also included on the district website. In order to get on the speakers list, if you are on the telephone, please raise your hand by dialing *3, or if you're on WebEx, on computer or cell phone, you open up the participant panel and click on the hand icon. Please note that there will be a moderator who will communicate with speakers. When it is your turn to speak, you will receive a voice prompt via telephone or a dialog box via WebEx. Please remember, after you've spoken, to put your hand down, so you just push *3 on the phone again, or you click the hand icon again on WebEx. Please note that due to the most recent public health orders, the option for in-person participation for public hearings is currently not available. Please commence your remarks by clearly saying your name and address or neighborhood. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council in order that everyone has an opportunity to speak. If you've already spoken but wish to add to your comments or provide new comments, please raise your hand once again once I've indicated that speakers will be offered additional speaking opportunities. So again, this is for the zoning bylaw amendment for university definition and Amblepath Strata Lot Use 1 clarification. It is not for marine zoning at this point. So only raise your hand if you wish to speak to this particular bylaw. *3 on the phone or raise your hand in the participant.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. We have one caller on the line. Johannes on WebEx. Johannes, you are the next speaker. Please state your name and address for the record. And you have 5 minutes to address council. Please go ahead.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Hello, my name is Johannes Bondorfer, and I work for the Quest University Alumni Association. We're headquartered up at Quest in the Garibaldi Highlands. I was also the representative for the alumni that negotiated the agreement between Primacorp and Quest University, which is now in effect. I want to speak on behalf of the Alumni Association today and express our support for this bylaw amendment and all subsequent amendments that were proposed. As alumni, our main interest is the well-being and long-term sustainability of Quest. We actively support initiatives that are designed to protect Quest and only Quest's future. The relationship between Quest and its new partner Primacorp is still very new. Discussions are ongoing about the future of all stakeholders, including alumni. We've asked Primacorp on their past comments about this bylaw. Unfortunately, they have not responded to us. So therefore, based on our own analysis, we think this this bylaw protects the interest of Quest by restricting land use to Quest or other institutions mentioned in the Sea to Sky University Act. This curbs potential other interests in the land, which do not include Quest, however unlikely they may be. The alumni analyzed this as a positive development and offer our support for the amendment. While we still support Quest and its new partner, we don't feel that this bylaw change represents a challenge or obstacle to that partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other hands?
No other hands at the moment, Mayor.
Just a reminder, if you're on the phone, it is star 3. If you're on WebEx, raise your hand in the participant panel. You have a hand.
We're going to go to Robert. Robert, you're the next speaker. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to address council. Go ahead. Robert Hibbert.
We can't hear you, Robert. If you might have muted your phone or computer.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, we all do it, don't we?
So, good evening, Mayor Elliott and council members. My name is Robert Hibbert, and I'm the CFO of Primacorp, and speaking here on behalf of New Quest Land Holdings Limited Partnership, the owner of the property leased to Quest University. You may recall that I last spoke during the public hearing held on March 23rd this year relating to the proposed amendment to the definition of university. I'm here to respectfully repeat my original request that you abandon this proposed amendment to the definition. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your consideration, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you very much for joining us.
No other callers at the moment, Mayor.
Okay, just say again, it is star 3 on your telephone or on the participant panel. Click on the hand icon, raise your hand. I'll just check in with council to see if there's any clarifying questions, council, that you have. Just going to give it another few seconds because I know there's people out there like me that take a little bit longer to follow instructions sometimes when it comes to technology. Okay. I don't have any other hands. I don't see any hands from council. So now that I've heard from everyone on the speakers list, it is a requirement that I ask 3 times if there's anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. So for the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? For a second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? And for the third and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Seeing no further speakers, please note that council members are not permitted to receive any further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. So this means that we can't speak to you out in the community or receive emails or phone calls on the bylaw until a decision on the bylaws has been made. Any and all communication from this point forward must be channeled through to staff. If there are no further speakers, I declare the hearing closed. Thank you very much for your submissions this evening. Okay. So, council, would you like another 5-minute stretch break before we move into this next public hearing? Are you good to go? Okay, we'll take another 5-minute recess. So we'll be back at 5 to 7. Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Welcome back. We are on item 4.3, District of Squamish zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw for marine zones, number 2771/2020. So for the third time tonight, I will read this opening statement. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act requirement to allow the public to present and to provide submissions to council respecting the proposed bylaw. And that is District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2200/2011 amendment bylaw for marine zones, number 2771/2020. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether speaking in favor or against the proposed zoning amendment. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Please note that the public hearing is not an opportunity for members of the public to have their questions answered by staff or by council. Any questions or points of clarification can be directed to staff by contacting the planning department. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district website. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations. Council is here to listen and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the public or each other during the public hearing. Up to and as part of this hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the staff's report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been added to the electronic agenda and to the electronic public hearing package available on the district website. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by viewing the electronic agenda. Submissions will be uploaded by staff as they are received. I will now ask the planning department to outline what the bylaw is proposing, and so I will turn it over to you, Ms. McJanet.
Thank you very much, Mayor Elliott. Hello, Council, and my name is Sarah McJanet. I'm a community planner with the district. Happy World Oceans Day. I will just take a moment to pop up the presentation. Great. I can't see anyone right now, but hopefully a verbal confirmation you can see my presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, Council. So this presentation provides an overview of the zoning amendment bylaw 2771, as well as intergovernmental and stakeholder engagement undertaken through the process, as well as our bylaw notifications. Clarifications are also offered to highlight key marine use and zoning considerations for a number of focus areas for this hearing. The purpose of the marine bylaw update is to increase overall alignment with existing and intended marine uses and set an initial framework for marine use regulation in Squamish. This update is a key action in the 2019 Squamish Marine Action Strategy, which identified important actions across 4 marine focus areas, from greater shared governance and enhanced coordination of navigational, commercial, recreational, industrial, community uses, ultimately to support coastal ecosystem stewardship and protection, sustainable resource management, improving community access and enjoyment, local economic development, and waterfront revitalization and tourism. Over time, marine zoning refinements will be needed, but this is an initial yet fulsome first step for coastal marine zoning. Subject lands and waters include both navigable and non-navigable marine and foreshore areas within the municipality, from the upper reaches of the Mamquam Blind Channel to the west side of Howe Sound to Woodfibre, and along eastern coastal shores past Darrell Bay to Walks Point. These lands and waters are unceded core territory and homelands of the Squamish and people, and subject to Indigenous law, cultural traditions, customs, plans, respecting CATSM and constitutionally protected rights. The municipality's zoning review predominantly addresses marine waters that have historically been zoned by the municipality resource, as well as some former industrial marine areas that have transitioned to other uses over time. The majority are aquatic crown lands and waters held by the province of BC, and of note, the zoning does not apply to Squamish Nation reserve lands or waters. The scope does not include the Squawelum Squamish Estuary Wildlife Management Area, any newly adopted comprehensive development zones for waterfront zoning, for example, at Oceanfront or Waterfront Landing or Sirocco in the Mamquam Blind Channel, nor does it include intensive waterfront industrial sites zoned Industrial 3, such as Squamish Terminals, Site B, and Woodfibre. Within our official community plan, marine zones are broadly aligned with the designations Marine Gateway and Marine Mamquam Blind Channel in Schedule B, in the Squamish 2040 official community plan. This bylaw amendment also includes an updated consolidated Schedule A to the zoning bylaw for the municipality. And this consolidated map series includes the new marine zones, as well as map updates for municipal, crown provincial, and a limited number of private parcels. The public hearing package links contain a summary of these additional changes, which include, as noted previously, adopted zoning amendments, improved alignment of zoning boundaries with legal parcel boundaries, and housekeeping amendments and correction of errors, etc. Engagement has followed the IAP2 consult level. The formal bylaw approval stage has followed 18 or plus months of consultations, drafting, and review with marine knowledge and rights holders, community organizations, and stakeholders. We've hosted early focus groups, community survey, intergovernmental outreach, and multiple council workshops and follow-up stakeholder discussions through the bylaw drafting stage to provide key direction on the marine zones and regulations, which have evolved to respond to council, intergovernmental, and community inputs to date. Staff have continued ongoing engagement and communications as detailed in the engagement log that was provided in the report package. And additional incoming feedback has been included in the public hearing agenda tonight and continues to come in. In terms of bylaw readings and notifications, following first reading of the marine zoning bylaw on March 16th, the bylaw and mapping were formally referred to Squamish Nation, federal, provincial, regional governments, and published to the project web page for an extended public comment period of 45 days that ended May 3rd. And then upon second reading, statutory notification was initiated and notices of the hearing were published in the May 27th and June 3rd editions of the Squamish Chief. Outreach and notification have occurred broadly through all regular channels, including the project page updates, district e-news messages, additional ads in the Squamish Chief, notifying of the public hearing, and direct email with contacts. The 5 new proposed marine specific zones are shown here, plus the district has proposed to apply an existing conservation zone, P4, ecological protection, to several marine focus areas for enhanced ecological protection. The bylaw also sets out a set of marine definitions as well as general regulations which apply to all marine uses and areas unless otherwise specified in the bylaw. Respecting navigation, which is federal jurisdiction and a common law right, general regs within Bylaw 2771 acknowledge navigation as occurring and permitted within all marine zones, as well as marine navigation aids. Marine navigation is defined to mean actively traveling in, on, through, or immediately above the water. Additional uses include marine parks and public authority uses, namely RCMP or police or Canadian Coast Guard, or marine search and rescue units, And for additional clarity, marine navigation is also permitted within marine areas that are proposed for P4 Ecological Reserve. Following in Victoria's footsteps, Bylaw 2771 proposes prohibiting long-term anchoring and moorage outside of marinas or private or moorage facilities, defined as anchoring or mooring for a continuous period exceeding 48 hours and more than 72 hours within a 30-day period, whether or not the vessel is anchored or moored in more than one location during that 30-day period. This general prohibition is a regulatory tool to address unauthorized and long-term moorage of vessels within navigation channels and to proactively address the derelict vessel situation Squamish continues to face. Bylaw 2771 also contains a number of additional general provisions for marine uses, including a prohibition on exclusively private moorage facilities associated with upland residential parcels, and these would trigger site-specific rezoning. No boat sheds except for use by public authorities are permitted. There are also siting provisions for piers and gangways for shared access, as well as calculations clarifying height above water, water lot coverage and setbacks, and the bylaw also sets minimum widths for access walkways to docks and floats, as well as connection to water and sewer service for on-water buildings, marina and commercial facilities, and float homes. Marine use parking requirements were reviewed and are prescribed for key commercial uses, including marina, public boat launch, boat rentals and charters, liveaboards, ferry terminal, marine fuel sales, marine transportation services, as well as permitted restaurants within the M2 zone. The bylaw further creates allowance for marine parking to occur either on an immediately abutting upland lot or within the downtown area as shown on Schedule D. There is also provision for cash in lieu for up to 4 required parking spaces in lieu of parking as required in the bylaw. This is consistent with existing bylaw provisions for uses within the downtown. These next slides quickly highlight the intents and uses within the 5 marine zones, and we can return to them during the hearing as needed for detail. The M1 Marine Navigation Zone provides for the use of the marine coastal area for general marine navigation and public recreation activity. It's applied to open water marine navigation areas, the navigation channel and the Mamquam Channel, and areas outside of waterfront sites and specific long-term tenured uses, such as log storage. The zone permits licensed aquaculture, which is the cultivation, rearing, harvesting of shellfish and marine plants, navigation use, as well as conditional uses for public boat launch and community water access, where designated by the municipality and associated with parking and loading. The M2 zone provides for a variety of marine commercial uses and marine infrastructure, associated moorage, and marine retail and recreation activities. This is applied to existing commercial marina facilities that are under long-term crown leases and existing. There's a very long list of permitted uses and a wide range of activities in the M2 zone, typically associated and ancillary with marina uses, including retail and rentals, fueling, as well as things like marine transportation services, marine-oriented tourist and recreation uses. Marinas are required to provide both temporary and long-term moorage to the boating public, and liveaboard is also included as a permitted accessory use to a marina up to a maximum of 10. There are prescriptions for water lot coverage, as well as siting and setbacks. The M3 zone provides public marine recreation areas to regulate recreational activities, access, and moorage. The intended application is to public water lots that have a dedicated focus on major recreation amenities on the water. And to start, the M3 zone has been applied to the Hunayak Park water lot on the Mamquam Channel, and other waterfront parks, in contrast, are actually zoned within our comprehensive development zones. There are a range of uses as permitted on this and shown on the slide, including marine transportation services for passenger ferries, boat charters, and water taxis as well. Again, the zone prescribes a water lot coverage maximum, in this case 40%, as well as some other considerations. The marine log storage zone, M4, aligns with tenured log storage sites in the marine coastal area and provides for use and siting of log storage and water-based log handling adjacent to immediately upland log sort facilities. The definitions in the bylaw are shown on the screen. Currently, marine log storage areas below the natural boundary in Mamquam Channel and around Watts Point hold general industrial I3 zoning, which is a broad land-based zone. The new M4 zone is applied to log storage areas for aquatic crown lands, with the exception of 2 water lots in the Mamquam Channel on the west side. As discussed previously, this is due to the Oceanfront Subarea Plan future use designation, so that these have been left as I3 for now. The M4 zone has log storage as a principal use, as well as the water-based log handling. And of note, 2 siting and setback guidelines have been introduced for log handling and storage within the M4 zone. These provisions apply best management practices, essentially guidelines for setbacks and measures to avoid and mitigate impact to marine environments. Log storage condition of use is to require a 20-meter depth to preclude tidal grounding, as well as a 100-meter setback for water-based log handling and storage from fish habitat areas. The M5 zone regulates major marine transportation infrastructure at the Darrell Bay Ferry Terminal, specifically the area under the Ministerial Order for Exclusive Ferry Terminal Use. Principal uses in the M5 zone are docks and floats, piers, ferry terminal, marine transportation services, pilings and dolphins, as well as accessory uses, floating breakwaters, and such things as minor vessel repair. We have introduced a building height maximum for this zone, but exempting hoists and ramp mechanisms for vehicle ferries, and a water lot coverage of 50%. Within the, as shown in the M5, the M5 zone is applied to the South Bay water lots below the natural boundary and a portion of the upland area within the dock abutting foreshore, which is under the MO area. The North Bay, which is not integral part of the ferry terminal itself, is proposed as M1 Marine General. In addition to the 5 new proposed M zones, there are a number of marine areas proposed for rezoning to P4 Ecological Reserve. The intent of the P4 zone is to protect and enhance land and water areas with high ecological value and to provide limited public access and use. Habitat protection, management, and enhancement is permitted in this zone, as well as accessory trails, education, and interpretive signage and displays. Currently, the P4 zone in the marine context does not permit outright docks or public boat launch. This existing P4 zone has already been applied to a number of terrestrial areas with high ecological value. And under this bylaw, it has been further proposed to be applied to crown water lots in 3 specific areas: the upper reaches of the Mamquam Channel, the Squamish estuary outlet in the Mamquam Channel, as well as 2 crown water lots within the Cattermole Slough outside of the Oceanfront CD69 zone. We will just show a couple of slides for these focus areas for clarity, particularly as there have been a number of submissions on the proposed zoning respecting these areas, especially in the upper Mamquam Channel. So to start there, there's a split zone proposed with the P4 Ecological Reserves zoning applied to an alignment north of a future pedestrian bridge in the upper Mamquam Channel, and then the M1 zoning to the south. Feedback has highlighted long-standing recreation interests and water-based connections for this area in proximity to the Adventure Center, Rose Park, the Smoke Bluffs, and an overall importance this area for tourism and outdoor recreation values and access. We've outlined in the past plans the Mamquam Channel Subarea Plan, the Upper Mamquam Channel Study, Land Use Plan and Policy, as well as the District of Squamish Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Concerns raised specifically with the P4 zone are that it does not allow for community water access infrastructure like docks or floats in this area. As noted in previous meetings, the Upper Mamquam Channel has high to moderate sensitivity with important habitat values. This is an area with salt marsh with subtidal mudflats, a riparian foreshore, and it's also the location of offsite habitat enhancement areas for other Mamquam Blind Channel development projects. The habitat sensitivity rating is based on the district's environmentally sensitive areas mapping that follows provincial protocol and is based on ecosystem type, occurrence, biodiversity values, and sensitivity to disturbance. Engagement with stewardship stakeholders in the focus groups noted a careful balancing act is required in the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel and beyond, given concern for impact of recreational activities on environmentally sensitive areas. Also, water quality considerations and enhancement measures have been reviewed over time and raised through this marine zoning process, including questions as to the benefits to water quality and fisheries values from dredging and increased flushing and water flow and connectivity. To summarize and clarify, key considerations informing the recommendation for the split zoning for the within the bylaw are include a desire to remove the existing I1 zoning, which allows non-water dependent and misaligned industrial uses for this area. Due to low tides and very low base flows in the upper reaches of the channel, this area is very physically restricted at certain tides to water-based recreation access currently. Future public recreation access infrastructure is recommended in areas with highest water depths, for example, in the lower reaches in the proposed M1 zone, to avoid or reduce impacts and preclude the need for sediment dredging for recreation access. In the upper reaches on the west side, habitat compensation areas have been planted in the past in 2017, as shown on this slide. And for clarity, the P4 zone does not preclude habitat enhancement works or restoration that may involve dredging for improved base flows. The district's environmental development permit area guidelines also exempt habitat enhancement and restoration specific works under the guidance of qualified environmental professionals when undertaken by the district. This is a slide that just clarifies the existing zoning context for the upland parcels within the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel area in response to some comments that we have received around desire for specific uses. On the adjacent uplands within the tourist commercial uses, such as the C3 zone, there is provision for accommodation, restaurant, accessory retail, etc. For the area zone C3 on the western side of the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel. And then, as you can see in the CD77 zone, just for context, the waterfront park block C does include non-motorized boat launch, public park and public use, as well as interpretive area and public art. And in this area, the Red Bridge project has proposed public access as well in the past as part of their development in conjunction with the pedestrian bridge. And then, as you can see, the zone allows for assembly and different parks and playground uses within the P3 zone. For further context, as has been raised by some submissions, the 2012 Parks and Recreation Master Plan also highlights the creation of blueways and aquatic recreation interpretive trails in the Mamquam Blind Channel, Cattermole Slough, and the estuary. However, this is and also noted that environmental protection should remain the priority in these areas. And there are lots of different logistical issues that need to be considered in terms of future access, practically speaking. The second P4 proposed area is the Squamish River outlet south of Stepmas, as shown in the zoning map on the right. This Squamish River estuary is identified a high ecological sensitivity area and recommended marine conservation area. It provides important flood and drainage relief as a primary floodway and overland flow area. Finally, the third proposed P4 zoning area is for 2 crown water lots adjacent to the 3rd Avenue access road and upland and east of the transportation corridor, the 3rd Avenue that goes to the Squamish terminals. The Cattermole Basin provides important flood and drainage relief and has high environmental sensitivity. In light of the ecological attributes of the slough, these crown water lots are proposed as P4 zone, which would limit marine infrastructure like piers and docks and development along the western foreshore and vegetated bench towards the head of the slough adjacent to the Capilano University upland. At second reading, an adjustment to the P4 boundary was made to terminate and align the P4 area with the southern boundary of the adjacent H1 Cattermole Natural Marine Subzone within the Oceanfront Comprehensive Development Zoning. And as you can see, there's a small dog leg in blue, which was revised as the M1 zone Marine General, recognizing the navigation open water area adjacent to the pocket berth of the Squamish terminals, as well as the future Oceanfront Park at the head of the peninsula. Finally, staff wish to note incoming inputs from the forestry sector and the province of BC, which have highlighted the critical importance of tidewater access for log handling and storage and transport as part of provincial supply chains. Inputs have highlighted requirements for meeting annual harvest targets in core operating areas such as West Howe Sound that are paramount for provincial auction and timber pricing. Constraints and physical requirements for log storage sites and siting have been highlighted in past summary materials, including historic and continued siting of log storage in lower salinity areas nearer to freshwater inputs, and these are well documented. These considerations have been brought to the foreground in the review of existing tenures, which we've aligned with log storage zoning to reflect these important uses in Squamish. For future sites and new or reactivated facilities, as required by the forest industry, the district will continue to work through intergovernmental approvals and permitting and engage in long-term land and water use planning with the forest industry. That concludes the marine zoning clarifications and presentation today, and so I'll just turn it back to the chair for the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McJenna. Council, I'll go to you first. Are there any clarifying questions you have? Not seeing any hands. We'll go to the public. So details to participate via telephone or WebEx are displayed on the screen for those who have logged in from their computer or are watching the live stream of the meeting. Instructions are also included on the district website. In order to get on the speakers list, if you're on the telephone, please raise your hand, so to speak, by dialing *3, or if you're on WebEx, on a computer or cell phone app, by opening the participant panel and by clicking on the hand icon. Please note that there will be a moderator who will communicate with speakers. When it is your turn to speak, you will receive a voice prompt via telephone or a dialog box on WebEx. Please remember to put your hand down after you've finished speaking by just doing the exact same thing, *3 on the phone, and clicking the hand icon again on WebEx. Please note that due to the most recent public health orders, the option for in-person participation for public hearings is currently not available. Please commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address or neighborhood. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council in order that everyone has an opportunity to speak to council. If you've already spoken and then wish to speak again to provide more or new comments, please raise your hand once again. And once I've indicated that speakers will be offered additional speaking opportunities. So with that, I will turn it over to the moderator.
Thanks, Mayor Elliott. Our first caller is David Williams. David, you're up. You have 5 minutes to address council. And you can go ahead, please.
Okay, great. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I just wanted to say that I wanted to obviously confirm that you'd received my letter, which I think Sarah has already confirmed you have. But I really just came on tonight to just let you know that if you had any questions for me on that or anything was unclear that I can answer that, but otherwise I have nothing to add.
We did receive your submission, Mr. Williams. Thank you for that.
Okay, great. Yeah. Other than that, I'm happy to just keep those there, and if you want to reach out to me or you have any questions to clarify anything there, I am here.
Thank you very much.
Our next caller is Jeff Levine. Jeff, you can go ahead, please. 。         . .
. . . . . . . . . 。 . 。 . 。 . . 。 . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Mr. Levine, if you're speaking, you need to take yourself off mute.
Thank you. Hello, Council Mayor. My name is Jeff Levine. I'm the owner of Sea to Sky Adventure Company, located in the Squamish Adventure Center. We've been in business for 11 years now, and 9 of those years we've been at the Squamish Adventure Center. We offer mountain bike rentals, tours, hiking tours, and we provide water sports rentals and tours. And we provide a lot of those tours directly from the Adventure Center. When we first started at the Adventure Center, one big issue was making the Adventure Center actually an adventure, a place where you can get adventure, and we're finally there after 9 years. A lot of people know this is a place to go to rent a boat or rent a kayak or a paddleboard. They rent it. We have a place set up right in the Adventure Center parking lot, and we launch right from the Adventure Center. Yes, the tide's not perfect. We do have to watch the tides, so we only typically try to send people out at a medium to high tide to set them out from there. This new zoning would stop my business. We would not be able to launch any kayaks or paddleboards or canoes into the Mamcombe Blind Channel from our Squamish Adventure Center. In a lot of the discussions that I've heard with staff, the entire purpose of the Adventure Center has been lost. I'm not certain if they were around when it was built or what had happened, but that was supposed to be our adventure hub. It was not in the downtown core because the parking's not there. We have a big parking lot there that facilitates a lot of parking. If we try to cluster all of the paddle rental clients to go to downtown Squamish to the new park, because that will be one of the only places the public can go to a dock is at the new park, where are they all going to park? And it's just going to create a lot of extra congestion down there. It's going to eliminate the business that I've been working on. And it's frustrating to hear this. I was part of numerous of the stakeholder engagements for the new marine zoning update. And for whatever reason, when this process came to first reading amongst council, that was the first time I heard they were moving the P4, they were trying to make a P4 zoning of the Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel being an ecological reserve. My intentions have always been to create a community dock at the top of the Mamcombe Blind Channel because I know it's not an ecological reserve. I've read reports from environmental companies. Cascade Environmental has done one, and it has always been the long-term plan of the people of Squamish back from the 90s, early 2000s, to develop a paddling blue waterway, which we've seen in the map. However, it seems to be completely forgotten. I guess, sorry, I'm getting off on topic here, but I went to all the community engagements and I wasn't even aware. I've heard talk that the District of Squamish staff have talked to other outfitters who said the paddling in the Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel is not very good. I don't know. I thought it would maybe be kind of important for the District of Squamish staff to actually talk to the person who's been there for 9 years doing it, but I've never had that conversation because it's a safe area up there. There's no motorized boats. The place where this zoning would put all the paddlers is amongst all of the marinas, all the other boat traffic. It's not safe.
Mr. Levine,
Hello?
30 seconds left.
Pardon, sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
You have 30 seconds left.
Okay. So the P4 zoning is not a good idea for this Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel. It's not an ecological reserve. It is all the dredge spoils from dredging of the lower Mamquam Blind Channel. That's why nothing grows in. That's why it's muddy and dirty. It needs to be cleaned up, and then it could have a much higher ecological value. I think we're looking at this through a very narrow, short time frame lens. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next caller, Mayor Elliott, is Heather Kawaguchi. Heather, if you could state your name and address for the record in 5 minutes. To go ahead, please. Hi, Heather.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. My name is Heather Kawaguchi. I reside at 38804 Britannia Avenue. And I'm calling this evening representing Tourism Squamish as the Director of Member Relations. Tourism Squamish is the non-profit member-based destination marketing and management organization that represents Squamish. We're responsible for promoting Squamish as a world-class, four-season destination. And we work with our industry partners to foster and support remarkable visitor experiences while also focusing on destination development, visitor management, and to protect and preserve our natural and cultural assets. We represent more than 125 members who own, manage, and operate tourism-based businesses in the Squamish area, including hotels, restaurants, activity operators, attractions, and retail shops. Our 2018 economic impact study demonstrated that tourism is a key driver in the local economy and generates over $95 million in visitor spending, as well as 788 jobs. Tourism Squamish sees huge potential in the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel. I want to take you through a scene and have you imagine for a moment a vibrant waterway with a variety of users in canoes, kayaks, and stand-up paddleboards. We envision people paddling up the channel from Winaic Park to a dock adjacent to the Adventure Center to meet for coffee with friends or a hike in Smoke Bluffs Park. Or how about a family renting kayaks from the Adventure Center and paddling down to Winaic Park to pop over to the farmers market for lunch before enjoying a paddle back to the dock at the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel. We've proposed this idea to several of our members who operate companies that offer canoe, kayak, and SUP rentals in addition to tours and lessons. If there was a public dock installed in tandem with selective dredging, this would enable safe and reliable launching location for their clients, as well as our residents. In fact, we spoke with many of these operators who confirmed their interest and excitement about the possibility and opportunities that could come along with a dock and selective dredging. The Upper Mamquam Blind Channel can provide a much-needed recreation venue for families and novice paddlers. With the adjacent Squamish Adventure Center, its restrooms and cafe, Smoke Bluffs Park, Rose Park, and the trail network, not to mention the ample parking located at the Upper Mamquam portion, that could create a public access point and encouraging use of it to add vibrancy and align with Council's strategic plan of 2018 and 22, which includes, and I quote, increasing year-round utilization of our multi-purpose space assets and public spaces by 2022. Our marine-based tourism and recreation development opportunities are extremely important to tourism in Squamish. As we referenced in our two previous letters to Council, we are concerned about proposed P4 zoning for the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel, which applies ecological reserve and protection to the area. The P4 zoning intent is to protect and enhance land and water areas with high ecological value to provide for limited public access and use. P4 zoning does not permit docks, a public boat launch, or the opportunity for selective dredging to enhance water flow. And we encourage you tonight, Mayor and Council, to vote against the P4 zoning of the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel to allow for further exploration of the possibilities by way of a marine economic opportunity study, a dredging feasibility study, and to consider the other zoning options which would meet the needs of Squamish residents, Squamish visitors, and the tourism economy. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Aguti?
Our next caller, Mayor Elliott, is Denton Hirsch. Denton, you can go ahead, please.
Hi, can you hear me? I've never used this before.
We can hear you.
Okay. Hi, I'm also an owner of the Squamish Adventure Inn, and I don't, you all have my letter, or our letter, and I don't have anything to add to that letter, and Dave is the best person to answer questions. I've never been to one of these meetings before, but I thought, I don't know if it's the right opportunity to ask a question. I don't really understand the rationale. Well, as you know, we're trying to have our zoning changed from M1 to M2. I know Sarah McJanet made a good description of what the difference between M1 and M2 is. I don't understand the rationale of why our hostel area was designated an M1. We are a tourist destination on the water, and we've been zoned for that with the C3 zoning until now. So I don't know why that has changed with this new marine zoning. And if somebody could explain it to us, that would be great. This may not be the forum for that, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to ask that question. That's it.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna go to Peter Sharp. Peter, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes. You can go ahead, please. Hi, Peter, you're on mute.
Can you hear us, Peter?
There, can you hear me now?
Oh, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Hello, my name is Peter Scharf. I'm the operations manager with BC Timber Sales. Address is 46360 Airport Road, Chilliwack. I would like to just read back a letter to council that we sent today in regards to the proposed marine zoning, and work through that. So BC Timber Sales supports the stewardship objectives of the District Squamish as set out in the district's official community plan, and we support the spirit and intent of the marine zoning bylaw amendment. However, there are aspects of the bylaw that are not aligned with well-researched and tested best management practices and will have unintended consequences to BC Timber Sales operation and the local forest industry. This may result from incomplete consultation with forestry stakeholder groups that work day to day in Howe Sound under the stringent requirements of the existing federal and provincial marine zoning regulations. These individuals and companies whose business interests will be impacted by this can provide important information to contribute to a more encompassing bylaw that better serves the interests of all users. For these reasons, BCTS recommends council defers their decision to proceed with this bylaw, to provide time for this consultation to take place and the necessary changes to be made. The bylaw proposes to modify current zoning on the west side of Howe Sound to M1 zoning, which does not support the use by BC Timber Sales or anyone in the forest industry to access a proposed log transfer facility north of Mill Creek. This very small site that already exists but is not currently permitted would then require a bylaw amendment to change it to I3 or M4 zoning, neither of which are appropriate for the intended use for BC Timber Sales has for this site. Further to this, the industrial M4 zoning, as proposed, unnecessarily imposes site constraints that will prohibit the permitting of this site, whereas it would be approved under provincial and federal guidelines. Specific to the concerns affecting BC Timber Sales operations, I would like to offer the following information. The primary goal of BC Timber Sales is to provide representative price and cost benchmark data for the market prices system to determine stumpage rates through the auction of approximately 20% of the timber harvested in public land in BC. Second, to conduct reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And third, to generate direct net revenue and indirect revenue for the province. Canada is currently in a dispute with the United States regarding a softwood lumber trade agreement, which expired in October of 2015, which resulted in a tariff being imposed on BC lumber products shipped to the USA. The tariff contributed to the shutdown of a significant number of manufacturing harvest operations throughout BC in 2019. A key component of the previous softwood lumber agreement and negotiations for a new agreement was that provinces had to implement a timber auction system. Results of the provincial auction process is audited annually by the United States Trade Department to ensure it meets the criteria set out in the softwood lumber trade agreement. Maintenance of the auction timber program is both a multi-provincial and federal trade issue. The Canadian forest product sector is a multi-billion-dollar industry that supports significant employment and a primary contributor to both the provincial and federal gross domestic product. Wood fiber, Mill Creek form part of the core operating area for BC Timber Sales business operations in the Squamish area. The annual allowable cut in this area is approximately 10,000 meters per year and provides a notable contribution to BCTS's annual harvesting program and will provide pricing data on the auction system. The area of harvest in wood fiber Mill Creek is greatly reduced through protection measures for wildlife, old growth, visual quality, and cultural sites and other important values. There are no unallocated areas of provincial forest in which to operate, meaning it is not a simple solution for timber sales to go somewhere else to make up this volume. Access to the wood fiber Mill Creek timber is 100% reliant on water transportation on Howe Sound. The historic forest access area was through the loading facilities on the old pulp mill site. However, with the construction of the wood fiber LNG facility, this is no longer possible. Under the Sea to Sky Land Resource Management Plan, completed in 2008, the wood fiber Mill Creek operating areas were identified as a working forest. With this designation, it was the expectation that economically viable harvesting activities will continue in this area. In relation to BC Timber Sales proposed log dump north of Mill Creek, known as Site 5, the historic access to the LNG property is no longer available. It is imperative that BC Timber Sales utilize alternate log handling sites, log dumps. The Mill Creek site, Site 5, will be used to access timber located in Mill Creek and north of it. This is a historic log dump that the bylaw will rezone as M1, marine navigation, which does not allow for water-based log handling or log storage and are not permitted uses within this designation. BC Timber Sales is concerned that our use of this site will conflict with the zoning, and we request that this site be changed in your zoning regulations to M4 marine log storage. Our new zoning type be created for this type of use. There's no other visible road option for accessing this area.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
We've reached the 5-minute limit, so I'm going to have to ask you to close off in the next 30 seconds, or you can come back once we've heard from other speakers and finish off.
Okay. What we'd like to mention here is that in regards to our facility here, we're looking at a fairly small size, 0.2 hectares in size, that'll handle approximately 20,000 commuters for in the near term. This is essentially site is 1/10 the size of the typical industrial log sort operations on the east side of Howe Sound that utilize multiple log dams, large upland storage, and significant log boom storage. We have taken a considerable investment in planning engineering assessment of this site and are preparing an application to construct and utilizing this site. As part of BC's log dump application to various responsible federal, provincial government agency, BCS application submission will undergo a vigorous environmental review to determine if the assessment work and associated mitigation measures will adequately address existing marine habitat conditions. In closing, sorry, I'm probably about my last 30 seconds here. Beyond that.
You are?
Okay, I'll do my closing paragraph and I'm done here. So that the last part is the wood fiber Mill Creek area is a key and core component of our Squamish business operation and critical to us meeting our objectives to support BC requirements under the softwood lumber agreement. Further, BC Timber Sales provide opportunities for local logging contractors to generate revenue employment and provide local wood product manufacturers primary or incremental log supply to meet the wood product manufacturing needs. Finally, Timber Sales provides employment opportunities for local community members and general revenue for provincial governments that can provide funding for local programs such as schools, policing, healthcare, social programs. As a compromise to both our positions, we ask that a minimum DOS.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up because I got to give everyone the same opportunity, but you're welcome to come back and speak. And we do have your letter in front of us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Our next speaker is Louise Walker. Louise, you have 5 finally is to address council. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Louise Walker. I'm the Executive Director from the Squamish Chamber, and I'm joining you from the unceded lands of the Squamish people. Further to our correspondence dated May 12th and June 8th, the Squamish Chamber recognises the potential for waterfront access for our local economy, the health and lifestyle of residents, and Squamish's unique destination positioning as a waterfront mountain town. The Squamish Chamber is aware of a number of concerns from the business community, including concerns around proposed M4 zoning on the forest industry and the constraints of proposed P4 zoning on future opportunities for the tourism sector. Further details have been provided in both our letters and by a number of stakeholders tonight. I'm really not sure that we are aligned on the sensitivity of this previous industrial area. I think that requires further work. Similarly, with for zoning, we really need to understand the impact of that on our existing businesses and the wider sea to sky economy. The Squamish Chamber would like to ensure marine zoning does not negatively impact existing businesses that are core to our community or create barriers for future possibilities. We believe the rezoning is premature, and until there has been full consultation with stakeholders to understand the needs and impacts of proposals, it's not something we can support. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
Mayor Elliott, we're through with first-time speakers. We do have a request for a second opportunity to speak.
Yep, go ahead.
Jeff Levine, we're going to give you another opportunity. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Levine. I live at 1589 Eagle Run Drive in Brackendale. I'm the owner of the adventure company called Sea to Sky Adventure Company, located at the Adventure Center. One thing I want to understand, and I want to bring to council's attention, is the entire intent of the P4 zoning having a high ecological value for the Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel. I don't know how environmental reports would have changed from a previous environmental report that said it had low ecological value by Cascade, and I believe Tourism Squamish had sent you copies of that report by Cascade Environmental, to now that there's 220 square meters of habitat compensation on the, I think it was the west side of the Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel, and how, because the developer didn't have enough room to put habitat compensation on their own property, and they did off-site compensation, that 220 square meters should make that entire area high ecological value. It was, it just allowed the developer to develop more of their property, which is allowed under fisheries and DFO. However, that should not spearhead the ecological zoning. I have spent numerous hours paddling in the Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel at a mid to high tide, even during the mud, unfortunately at times. And it is just that, it is silty mud. That's why when you are up there, you see a complete absence of any vegetation growing at low tide in the mud flats, because it's silty mud. It needs to be dredged. I do know dredging does cost a lot of money. However, we should not eliminate that entire potential of future dredging of the Mamcombe Blind Channel, of the upper part, with this zoning. Having a community dock would be great to have it up there, so anyone could go up there and use it. The new park that is being designed down at the District of Squamish's new park on Loggers Lane, I think it's a great place. However, go down there on a busy Saturday or Sunday and you can see the number of boats that are going back and forth between the marinas and trying to go out into the Howe Sound. Now picture yourself with a family, young kids, trying to learn how to paddle for the first time, or just trying to go out with a fun experience and trying to navigate through all the different boats. I've seen it, and it's not a pretty place, as opposed to being in the upper Mamquam Channel, even at a high tide, just paddling the way it is. It's safe, it's calm water, and there's no motorboats zipping by you. And there has been some questions of the cost of doing the dredging. Well, I want to relate a little bit of a story to council and the mayor, that in 2015, I talked to the district of Squamish when I saw all of the derelict boats and over 400 pilings in the Mamquam Channel. We had 200-foot barges in the channel. I talked to district Squamish staff and they said, you know, we've tried to do this. We've spent $80,000. We have no idea. It's going to cost another $1 million. We don't have it. I took that and I ran with it. I found another developer who was willing to front a lot of money and generated a lot of community support. And I led the cleanup of the Mamquam Channel, of all the derelict boats and the 400 creosote pilings. And it didn't end up costing the district of Squamish the money to pay for it. It was all paid for by others. And using that same type of community support, we can do the same type of dredging in the upper Mamquam Channel and building a dock in the upper Mamquam Channel. But if this zoning goes through, it'll never happen. So my request, I do understand how hard it is to try to bring all the ideas and thoughts of such a large project by District of Squamish staff and ensure it satisfies everyone. But this upper Mamquam Channel is not the right place to put the P4 zoning. Because think, where would you launch a kayak if you wanted to have a dock other than the new District of Squamish Park? You can't do it at the Cattermole Slough because no docks will be allowed. You can't do it in the upper Mamquam Channel. And you can't do it in the Squamish estuary. So we live in an oceanfront community, and yet we have no access for paddlers from public lands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Dave Southam. Dave, you have 5 minutes to address council, and if you could please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's Dave Southam, District Manager of the Sea to Sky District for the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations. I have shared some information previously, but I just wanted to follow up on a few additional items. One is a reminder, something that I have shared, but the province through the previous forest minister, has previously communicated to the District of Squamish about the critical importance of our long-term secure access to tidewater and how important it is to the provincial economy and specifically to Sea to Sky corridor and beyond. I think some of the local stakeholders in the forest sector may have shared some letters today that I was then forwarded, and so you can see that there is some great concern at the present moment. I heard earlier that the Squamish Nation were consulted as the core nation. One thing, just from my personal perspective as a statutory decision maker in the corridor, is one concern I may share there is regarding the duty to consult with other nations, and I'm not exactly sure how that applies to the District of Squamish or municipal government, but I believe we've all been provided direction from our courts on that. But the concern I have working with so many First Nations in the corridor is that I didn't hear anything about the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in particular. The their traditional territory definitely overlaps with the marine zoning proposals. But also recognizing there's far-reaching implications to other nations with these proposed bylaws, including the Lillooet, Chamois, Skatine, Douglas First Nations. And I'll get to that a little bit more on why I feel that way. The province has revenue sharing agreements with First Nations that is directly tied to the forest harvesting through our forest and range consultation and revenue sharing agreements. So limiting access to the provincial forests will result in a direct negative financial impact to First Nations. And I'm concerned about the potential for a duty to accommodate there. So if we are actually not able, if, for example, the BCTS example that I heard raised earlier today, or this evening, pardon me, at the Site 5, if that log sort is, or sorry, log dump is not able to be reestablished, there will be direct financial implications to First Nations in the community, and that is something I share great concern over. I guess further on that, I just wanted to clarify from my perspective that yes, there's definitely a need to consult with First Nations as they're on their rights and title with the nations themselves, but many of the First Nations in our community are active in the forest sector, and their business arms are very distinct from their council rights and title direction. And so I would encourage folks to reach out to the stakeholders that all the First Nation stakeholders that all operate forest tenure and business operations within the Sea to Sky area, the entire Sea to Sky area, that rely heavily on the log sorts in Squamish. Maybe one more thing is just, you know, there's currently an opportunity to work with a suite of qualified professionals in both government and the local industry, you know, to make suggestions and improvements to the proposed bylaw that will address environmental and stewardship objectives that I think we all share. So I'd highly encourage taking the time to seek that input from some of the qualified professionals that are very engaged on these types of activities on a day-to-day basis, whether that's our forestry experts, whether that's our you know, professional biologists, professional foresters, hydrologists, whoever that might be. I guess lastly, you know, we're all faced with limited resources, and to not address the concerns up front that the stakeholders and BC Timber Sales have shared prior to finalizing the bylaw will only create unnecessary workload, in my opinion. And so I think there's an opportunity there to address that up front, because it will create a lot more anxiety, a lot more work, and a lot more potentially unnecessary workload at all levels of government.
Mr. Sutton, that's your 5 minutes. If you can wrap up now, please.
I'll wrap up with my request, I guess. So please consider the readjustment to the bylaw to reflect the needs of Site 5. Please consider the importance of the provincial interests here in sharing revenue with First Nations. And specifically, please consider the interests, the economic impacts to local First Nations themselves that may result from these suggested bylaw amendment. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your submission.
Our next caller, Mayor Elliott, is Abby Majendi. Abby, you can state your address, name and address for the record, and your 5 minutes to address the council. Go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor Elliott and councillors. My name is Abby Majendi, and I'm a board director for the Squamish Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber's address is 38551 Loggers Lane, Suite 102, Squamish V8B 0H2. The Squamish Chamber of Commerce is the oldest and largest business organization in the Squamish community, with members across various sectors from manufacturing to technology. Around 1 in 4 Squamish Chamber members are directly part of the tourism sector. It is our understanding that the tourism sector has a strong vision for the Upper Blind Channel, which incorporates a thriving waterfront with access to parking, the Adventure Centre, Rose Park, and more, but which needs water access and is not possible under the proposed P4 zoning. More flexible uses above the highway bridge are limited with the proposed P4 zoning. For many decades, the Blind Channel has been an important economic zone, creating jobs and supporting local businesses. The area has supported the restoration of the Squamish estuary through the relocation of businesses and is now one of the few remaining areas for water access. The Blind Channel is in need of dredging. The Squamish Chamber previously identified the need for dredging in the Blind Channel, which has not been significantly dredged since March 1986. Our correspondence from July 2018 shared our desire for immediate project planning and the need for an ongoing maintenance strategy. Marine safety, economic development, and quality of life are affected by navigation channel constraints related to lack of dredging in the Blind Channel. Marine zoning is clearly a complex initiative, having an impact on our businesses, residents, visitors, and natural habitat. As a waterfront community, Squamish is in a crucial period with huge opportunities to improve access to water, whether for recreation, to drive tourism, or to support the many possibilities of marine-related and eco-friendly businesses. It is our understanding that a number of studies are planned in the near future related to marine use, including an amenity needs and opportunities assessment. The Squamish Chamber is supportive of these studies and is keen to first understand the community's needs and economic opportunities. The Squamish Chamber recognizes the potential of waterfront access for our local economy, the health and lifestyle of residents, and Squamish's unique destination positioning as a waterfront mountain town. We are keen to participate in any future engagement and supportive of immediate needs and opportunities assessments in advance of the marine zoning. The Chamber therefore suggests further review of the P4 zoning and requests Council to vote against it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Council now and see if Council has any clarifying questions that Ms. McDermott can address based on what you've heard or your own curiosities from the staff. Council Race and then Council Petio.
Thank you. Through staff, do we know exactly where this site is that the gentleman from BC Timber Sales referred to, north of Mill Creek?
Yes,
do we have any mapping that might show that?
Yes, we do. And through to council, this was brought to council at second reading. The site that BCTS is referring to is a former log dump site on the west side of Howe Sound, north of wood fiber. And I'll just take a moment if the chair would like me to bring that up right now, or to continue to answer questions and then bring up the mapping.
And bring up the image now, address Councilor Race's question.
You bet. Just one moment.
You're on mute now, Ms. McKenna. We can see your slides, but we just can't hear you.
There we go. I think you're probably looking at a public hearing slide. So let me just trying to stop sharing just so that I can fast forward to the other one. Sorry, bear with me for one moment. All right. Hopefully council can see the slide now that's titled West Howe Sound, Wood Fiber and Mill Creek areas. Just a quick confirmation.
Yeah, if you could put it in presentation mode, it would be bigger for us.
There we go. Okay, so this was actually provided by BC Timber Supply, and the red star in the middle of the screen shows the northern log dump site that was in operation in last use the 1990s. It's situated at the outlet of a water course in a small bay that has bedrock and mixed boulder cobble shoreline.
And is it developed now? I mean, is there development there? I can't remember
No.
exactly what I saw second reading.
This was based on the information provided by BCTS. This is has been a deactivated site that's proposed for future reactivation as part of the operating plan 26 for, I believe, 2023 as part of a future future infrastructure. Some of the information that was also provided in the package includes some information about some of the initial engineering plans. So for the log transfer facility, this would include a barge loading and a skidway, as well as a dock and a booming area for log storage. And this was included in the council package.
Thank you.
Councilor Pettingill?
Yes, thank you. A couple things. If I understand, the current zoning isn't appropriate for the BC timber sales needs, and the proposed ones isn't either. So am I correct in thinking that no matter what, a different zoning is required? And so if we adopted the zoning, it's just the starting point would be something that's more aligned with our values, but in any case, more zoning or permitting work would be required to accommodate what BC Timber Sales wants to do. Is that correct?
Through to council and community, yes, that's correct. The current, the zoning that's prescribed, the M4 zoning is not a good fit in this scenario as currently drafted with the 100-meter setback provision, which would basically not be sort of reconciled with this current location of this log dump site. And as highlighted by BC Timber Supply and the province, the nature of this site for a log transfer facility is such that, you know, it's quite a bit smaller. It would have an intermittent volume, and it's not a sort of a larger site that has logs coming from other locations. It would simply be to transfer logs from the upland to the shoreline. So right now the M4 is not a good fit as highlighted in the bylaw. So it would be requiring additional work, and so hence the recommendation previously to undertake this through a site-specific zoning.
Okay, thank you. And if I might switch over to the upper Mamquam blind channel, from the diagrams and so on, it looks to me like the south part of Rose Park aligns with an M1 water zone, which, as I understand, would allow for some like canoe and kayak launching and so on. Is that correct?
Through to council, currently the M4, the P4 zone in those upper reaches of the channel does not include community water access or public boat launch. And sorry, Councillor Pettingill, can you just repeat the second part of the question?
Yeah, thanks. And I understood that for P4, which is at the upper part of Rose Park. But looking at the maps, it seems that the lower part of Rose Park aligns with M1, which I think would allow some community access and boat launching. Is that
through to council? That's absolutely correct. So the M1 zone does permit both community water access as well as public boat launch for those water areas, and those are distinctly defined. So the community water access is essentially any structure that provides public water access and recreation opportunities for the general public, including wharves, docks, piers, boardwalks, and other marine access facilities. A public boat launch is differentiated and is a different type of public facility for a boat ramp or a launch that allows someone to retrieve vessels or watercraft from the water using a boat trailer or hand launching. So it's a more major facility.
okay?
Both are permitted in M1.
Okay, thank you. And if I understand P4, you're not you don't sort of have shoreline access to the water, but once you're in the water, you could still use the water in P4 from a canoe or kayak. So I guess, am I correct in thinking that you could, in theory, the zoning would permit you to launch a canoe or kayak from the southern part of Rose Park, but then you could use that paddleboard or kayak throughout the P1 or P4 and M1 zone in the upper Mamquam Blind Channel?
That's correct. Yeah, the P4 zone allows marine navigation, and it's only the only limitation is just around practical tides and actual water levels and navigability. Certainly, the intention of the P4 is around ecological protection and limited public access. So, in terms of future review, we would look for sort of the best places to allow for and to try and focus that activity to the south currently where there's deeper water areas. But as highlighted in previous council presentations, we are undertaking a larger marine access review later this year. And this will uncover and surface kind of a lot of the plans that are happening in the upper Mamquam Blind Channel, including the Squamish Adventure Center revitalization and considerations for how best to situate access and use at Rose Park as well, and then connectivity with the smoke blocks as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Villaneskis?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add to what Sarah said about P4. You know, that the new zoning, it does not have facilities in it, but if somebody wants to launch a boat from that area by hand, that's totally fine. If there's a commercial business that is currently commercially launching boats by hand, you know, they'd be considered kind of a legal non-conforming use. So that can continue to operate as it does today.
Any other questions? Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, a few questions. The first, I'll continue on the P4 zone and also maybe more broadly. The current zoning for the majority of these waterways in the Mamquam Blind Channel, as I understand it, is an industrial zone at the moment, which actually doesn't support any public access. So am I correct in thinking that by moving to M1 and potentially to some degree to P4, that actually increases public access to the waterway?
The latter shift to the from industrial to the M1 does now allow for community water access more formally. There are some subject conditions as well in terms of like dock size and things like that, but it does allow for the use, yes.
Thank you. And then just to clarify, I think I heard this in your presentation, Ms. McJanet, but there were quite a few assertions that dredging would then no longer be allowed in the P4 zone in our submissions this evening, but am I correct in thinking that that is actually untrue, that we can still dredge, especially for restoration and habitat enhancement purposes?
The zoning the P4 zoning as stated allows for habitat enhancement and restoration. So if there were proposed works for habitat enhancement and restoration for water quality that had co-benefits that did improve base flows and flushing, those are not precluded and would be allowed under P4. That's staff's interpretation and application of that P4. And further, for certainty, in our environmental development permit area guidelines and regulation in the official community plan, works for habitat restoration and alterations are exempt from development permit so long as they're done under the guidance of a qualified environmental professional as directed by the District of Squamish.
Thank you. And then on another topic with respect to M4 and the number of comments that we received on that, I'm just curious if staff can just illuminate. I went back through the engagement summary and just ensuring that this was indeed referred to the appropriate agencies at the province to provide feedback so that it is in line with what their current best management practices are, both at the province and perhaps DFO as well.
Thank you for the question. Through to all of council, on the intergovernmental referrals for the bylaw as a whole, for all of the provisions and all the mapping, the intergovernmental referrals went to Squamish Nation, the Rights and Title Technical Review Group at Squamish Nation, as directed through their Squamish Connect referral portal. The bylaw was also referred to Department of Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations. So the ecosystems branch, it was forwarded to the district resource manager, as well as there's a lot of engagement that happened with the Aquatic Crown Lands Authorization Officer. Then we also, and that was going on very early and ongoing through the process. We also then ended up engaging with BC Timber Supply, which is connected to the province on the marine log storage zoning. Other government agencies, Transport Canada, but it was not referred to the Fisheries Habitat branch at Department of Fisheries and Oceans. That was the one area that it was not formally referred to DFO in that for that component. And then I'm probably forgetting, and to the SLRD, regional government as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Ms. McDevitt, can I ask Mr. Williams and Mr. Hirsch raise the issue around the hostel there, and that is being zoned in an M1 zone versus an M2 zone. And I'm wondering if you could clarify that.
Yes, absolutely. So in the upper reaches of the Mamquam Blind Channel, again, for council and community to remember that the M1 or the marine zoning is applying to marine waters. So from the natural boundary below. So just for 100% certainty, there's no change to the upland zoning that applies to Squamish Adventure Inn. That C3 zoning continues to exist. The crown water lots fronting those private parcels, as well as the other parcels in that upper reach north of the highway bridge, the M2 zoning, which predominantly includes marina and all of the ancillary and uses that are typical with marina for that major water-based commercial zoning, was not seen to be applicable or suitable for those upper reaches, in part because of the low water levels and the fact that it's very hard for actual, a lot of boats beyond, low water based, like personal watercraft or stand-up paddleboards or kayaks, to actually even move into those upper areas. So we looked to apply a different zoning in those upper reaches, recognizing there's not actually physical access for more like major moorage activity. And that's really a core use that's established in that M2 zone. So that was the major distinguishing factor between those.
But a dock could be put in an M1 zone as long as it provides for public access as well as private access.
That's correct. Yeah. And just for certainty, so early on in a council workshop, I believe it was either the February council workshop in 2021 or a preceding workshop, when we talked about, when we brought forward the consideration for private moorage facilities, there was clear direction from council at that time not to include private moorage facilities. And this is very, and instead to focus on public and community water access facilities only. This is a similar approach to communities like Comox and Saanich, which do not allow for private moorage facilities, and thereby would trigger rezoning for applicants that wanted consideration for private facilities.
Thank you very much. Can I also ask, when DFO chooses a compensation area, like in the upper reaches of the Mountain Blind Channel, what limits does that create for us? Obviously, it's an enhancement project, so it increases the ecological value. But can we ever touch that area?
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Through to council, and I will ask other staff to jump in if there's further additions. But based on my understanding of that discussion process with that habitat compensation, offsite habitat compensation area, there was discussion with District of Squamish to identify suitable and receiving sites for compensation. I think typically they look to compensate, do offsite compensation in an area that's upstream or kind of within the same habitat or waterway area. And so with that compensation area, that was a requirement of the Fisheries Act authorization for the Sirocco project. And it also requires sort of ongoing monitoring for a set period of time to monitor the enhancement works. And so I think, in allowing for that habitat enhancement, that's something that we would think very carefully and consider before removing, and I think there would be additional compensation that would be required on top of compensation, and so not necessarily a good practice to undo kind of those works. And so that was something that we would like to review in more detail through the Upper Mamquam Blind Channel Water Access Study.
Thank you. My final question is the interpretation of the DFO guidance. So we've received a number of letters saying that we're interpreting them differently than an industry, and that our interpretation may limit access to tidewater. That wasn't my understanding, but maybe you could clarify why perhaps there's a misunderstanding of our intent.
So for clarification and background, the provisions in the M4 zoning that were established, these provisions were raised through early engagement with stewardship groups within the community, and also based on review of environmentally sustainable approaches for log handling, and kind of a desktop review of the types of regulations under the Fisheries Act and guidelines that exist for the coastal forest industry in BC. So these include the DFO's environmentally sustainable log handling facilities best practice guide, as well as approved work practices for certain aspects like reactivation of log dump facilities. So altogether, these guidance documents were reviewed, and those two provisions stood out as citing considerations that may be worthy of consideration as part of the siting for future log storage areas progressively to ensure mitigation of environmental and habitat harms, I guess. And so those are the minimum water depth as a best practice and the 100-meter offset from important fish habitat. And so in closing, these new regulations applying to M4 zones for existing tenures would only come into play for new tenures or renewals in future, and we would look to highlight those new regulations over time.
Thank you. I think we have two callers. We've been sitting for quite a while, and so I'm just going to give council and everyone tuning in a break, and so we'll recess until 8:35. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing us that recess. It's hard work to listen to the submissions, and it's great to give our staff a break as well that have to answer questions and give presentations. So, council, I didn't see any more hands before the break, so I was going to go back with 3 speakers on the list. So I will do that now.
We have David Williams on the line again. Would like to speak. David, go ahead, please.
Okay, hello. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity to talk again. I know there's a lot of factors to this zoning, and I know that ours is a very small part of it, but I am worried that this is the only chance I'll have for you to hear me and our concerns, so I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, I just want to mention to Councillor Chris Pettingill, he had chatted about the community launch with M1. I just wanted to mention that in our specific case, that wouldn't help us much because at a tourist and recreation oriented facility like ours, we ideally want to be able to launch kayaks and SUPs, which we do as a rentals program from the water, and not just constantly walking down through the mud that is there. I've been looking into that for quite a few years and have been told all along that that would be very difficult to do because of this zoning. So we've been waiting for this opportunity in the hopes that this zoning will be in our favor so that we can do the things we've wanted to do for years. I've been inquiring about restaurants, I've been inquiring about docks, I've been inquiring about launches, and all along I'm told that it's very unlikely anything like that will get approved because of this zoning. So to his point, I just want to mention that for us as a private business, the community launch wouldn't be a very good option for us with M1 because not only would we have to build it, but we'd also have to be responsible for the health and safety of anybody that goes on that community launch. Whereas M2 would allow for a private launch, which is much more appropriate for a private business. Councillor Jonas mentioned that if you had been launching from your property, you guys would put a blind eye to that and we could continue to do that. But again, to the point, it's not ideal for us. We want to have something proper and safer. Currently, we send people through the mud down to the water, and we do want to change that. Another note to that point is that we're actually on our property just edges along the point where the water is still water. At our location, on the lowest of low tides, the water is still there on just a tiny corner of us. So we're very close to being, well, we're basically the same as everybody else on the other side of the bridge. So Miss Sarah McJannet did mention that one of the reasons why we would be M1 and not M2, well, I think her only reason was that we're slightly different from everybody else because we're not as deep water there. But I guess I really want to point out that a few things on that. One is that if we were to dredge, we would be just as deep as everybody else. I know it's not too much to do with this, but I do have a nautical sciences degree granted by the Canadian Coast Guard, and I did spend 10 years with them. So I do know a little bit about ocean and waterways. And I just want to say that the environmental implications really can't change too dramatically based on the location of a bridge or highway. Us being on one side of that highway or the other really shouldn't play a big role in whether we get different zoning from anybody else on the other side. So that is one of my concerns there. And the other is that she touched base on the idea of SUP or kayak launches, but another huge part for us of the M2 zoning is that it also allows things like restaurants, or I believe I'll read the exact words of the M2 zoning. It allows marine-oriented tourist and recreation uses. That is quite a vague term, but I would believe, as our letter states, that nobody else is better suited to do that than us. We have the people, the guests, and have been there for a long time, and I think have been having a good match to the community. So we would really like to expand on that, and we'd really like to actually utilize more of our C3 zoning on land. We've been quite stymied trying to do things for C3 zoning, and I really think that a M2 zoning would be much more appropriate for a C3 zone business than an M1 on that. And then I think the last thing I'd like to add is that although I may be wrong, I do fear that once we go to, you know, the protected uplands zoning that you guys are considering going to, or in our specific case, the M1 zoning, is that it's going to be very hard to go back. I can't really imagine as a small business with all the trials and tribulations we'll deal with trying to fight to get M2 zoning down the road. So I really do think that that's what everybody is speaking about tonight, is trying to do the right thing or be cautious now, because once we go that route, it's very hard to turn back. And that's everything. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Next caller is Dave Selkin. Dave, you can go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just wanted to maybe provide a little bit more information. I think Councillor Stoner asked about what I believe, sorry, this is hour 14 for me, so my hearing's starting to get a little bit tired. But I thought there was a question about whether the bylaws exceed DFO's best practices or suggested best practices. And I just wanted to bring folks' attention to that the Council of Forest Industries and Fisheries and Oceans Canada is, I believe, still continuing to work on a draft document. The last draft that I've seen is February 2021. So, you know, quite recent for the reactivation of existing log sorts and kind of what environmental issues to pay attention to and what happens when you can't meet the new conditions. And so that's one question was, or a follow-up point was, have those DFO best practices that were negotiated with the Council of Forest Industries been considered in the criteria that the District of Squamish bylaw is proposing? And then maybe if I could just, I believe Mayor Elliott asked about the access to tidewater and, you know, how will that, I'm inferring that that would be around my previous comment about would be restricting access to tidewater. That is particularly about Site 5. Since the sale of the wood fiber LNG private property from Western Forest Products to WLNG, the forest industry has not had access to the log dump that was previously on the wood fiber property. And so when I'm saying that the access to tidewater is disappearing through this zoning, that would be the zoning for around Site 5. And so if it does not support the reactivation of the log dump to the north, or what has been called in the past Site 5, that will essentially cut off access to Mill Creek and the timber supply for BC timber sales in that area. So that was my comment about the potential to restrict access to provincial crown forest.
Thank you, Mr. Sedem.
Next caller is Jeff Levine. Jeff, you have another opportunity to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Jeff Levine again. Sorry, I forgot one little point of my conversation that I wanted to bring about. In reviewing the zoning as it's done, yes, there is that portion of the Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel that is considered M1. And some of the other councillors have alluded that, yes, a public dock could be built on that M1 portion, which is great. However, there is only 94 meters in that M1 zone that is actually public waterfront. The upland owner is the District of Squamish. There's only 94 meters of that area that is owned by the District of Squamish. The rest is private property owned by the Squamish Adventure Inn and Red Bridge on the other side. And of the total length of Rose Park, I just measured on the Squamish web maps, is actually 462 meters. So less than 25% of the linear boundary of Rose Park that's fronting the water is in the M1 zoning. But my bigger question is, it seems ridiculous. We have this massive parking lot 380 meters away from the M1 zoning where everyone would park. Where would people rent their kayaks? There's no place to rent a paddleboard or kayak from, and most of that shoreline is very inaccessible. So what we need is a public dock built on the Upper Mamcombe Blind Channel that's accessible to the public Squamish Adventure Center and the public Squamish Adventure Center's parking lot and the public land owned in Rose Park, so that our public, we can use it. We don't need it stuffed down into the corner adjacent a private property, because what's going to happen is all the people are going to end up parking at the Squamish Adventure Inn, and they don't have a very big parking lot, and I don't think it would be fair to put that onto him. So to reiterate, I do understand if it's for environmental reason, we can make application for dredging. However, for recreation use, it'll be very, very difficult. It would only be a afterthought for recreation use. This was planned as a blue waterway. Even before the Olympics, there was talk about putting the culvert under Highway 99. And having this zoning would completely eliminate all hopes of doing that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Louise Walker, you're next. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Without repeating what everyone else has said, I think it's really important to listen to what's been said tonight. We've heard from the forestry industry, from existing businesses, from the impact it will have up and down the Sea to Sky corridor, from those locally owned and First Nations owned businesses. We've heard from property owners. We've heard from the tourism industry. It seems like there's definitely a need to just take a pause and go back and really understand the implications of this and what it will have on our economy and our businesses. And I would urge you just to take a moment to rethink this.
Thank you.
Next caller is Dave Rollins. Dave, if you could please state your name and address for the record. And you have 5 minutes to address council. You can go ahead. Dave, you're on mute.
Hi, my name is Dave Rollins. I'm an engineer with Blackmount Logging Squamish at 2021 Paco Road. Just to further Dave Southern's comments regarding the potential impacts to First Nation groups and the logging industry as a whole within the Sea to Sky corridor, I'd just like to read through a letter I sent off to council today. Blackmount Logging, Alewatosh Limited Partnership, Lillooet Forestry Ventures Limited Partnership, and the Squamish Forestry Limited Partnership I've reviewed the above referenced bylaw and have great concerns over the impact these changes would have on the viability of the forest sector in the Sea to Sky Natural Resource District. Forestry and logging have been a long-time fixture in the Sea to Sky corridor, and along with mining, what the community was founded on. We understand that the community has transformed since that time with population growth and the increase in recreational wilderness adventure. However, forestry has developed and changed over this period as well. This has been accomplished through increased attention to sustainable harvesting, changed practices, and continual development and implementation of legislative frameworks to ensure our social license to operate continues. Most recently, Premier Horgan and Forest Ministers Conroy recently announced an intentions paper on June 1st with a mandate of diverse time local family-run logging companies and a mill operator. The remaining 320,000 cubic meters is managed through community forest agreements, First Nation woodlot licenses, and other forest licenses tenure held by First Nations throughout the district. This far exceeds the provincial goal of 20% First Nation representation. Recreation and wilderness experiences are a significant economic driver in the region, but the ability of First Nations to succeed through their controlling interest in the forest sector and the associated employment, revenue, and taxes generated cannot be overlooked by the District of Squamish. Based on the geography of the Sea to Sky Natural Resource District, there are only two routes to get harvested volume to the Vancouver log market: Harrison Lake and Howe Sound. Harrison Lake is not a viable option for the majority of the district's volume due to hauling distances and its short operating window due to the Fraser River water levels and fisheries restrictions. Howe Sound is key to the continued success of the forest sector in Squamish. Any reduction to the sorting and dumping capacity within the Sea to Sky district will have a significant impact to forest operations, employment, and tax revenue for the district. If the proposed changes to the minimum water depths and setbacks are approved, there will be a catastrophic impact to the currently viable and long-established log storage and handling facilities. After reviewing the documentation available regarding the new marine zones, we believe there has been a misinterpretation of existing best management practices and other guidelines generated by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans regarding water depths and the introduction of additional setbacks. Based on the potential impacts of tenure holders in the district, further and more active consultation and scientific review must be conducted prior to the implementation of Bylaw 2271. We appreciate you providing us with an opportunity to comment on the proposed bylaw changes and look forward to developing a science-based plan moving forward that meets the requirements of the forest sector in the Sea to Sky district while achieving the goals of the community. Signed on behalf of all the parties. My biggest concern basically is with the M4 designations and the continued comments regarding you're good to go now, but we'll be questioning it upon renewal. Blackmount itself has the Watts Point dryland sword and has been watering wood down there since the early 80s and has invested a considerable amount of money since that term through paving, and most recently $250,000 site upgrade for water drainage and filtering to ensure deleterious substances don't enter Howe Sound. So as a company with that big of an investment and all we're hearing from council is, well, you're good to go, but we'll relook at it at when it's time for renewal. It doesn't give us much confidence as a business plan looking forward where such a significant investment's been made over such a long period of time to have it dropped where the expectations of water depths and setbacks are exceeding those past standards and even the current ones under the regional code of practices being developed by Kofi and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Rollins, that's your time if you want to just wrap up.
I just reiterate with Dave Southern and myself, it's a significant impact to the forest sector within the district, and we need to sit back and rethink and relook at the conditions set with the M4 zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Elliott, there's no longer any hands up to speak. Thank you.
So Janet, is there anything that you needed to clarify there in any of those comments that you heard? And council, any questions from you? Okay, I'll go to Mr. Vilniskis and then Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to answer one of the concerns that Mr. Williams had about the public access docks being only permitted in M1 zone. Essentially, what it means is that if a private entity wanted to build a dock in front of their property, they could, but it just would need to have public access provisions on it. So it essentially ensures that any docks built in that area, whether they're privately built or by a public entity, have public access.
Mr. Vilniskis, can I also just clarify, are the docks allowed in the M2 zone allowed to be private, or do they also have to be
I would have to defer that question to Ms. Majanet.
For the M2 zone, moorage available to members of the boating public must be required or must be provided. That's the provision that follows provincial operational policy for commercial marinas. And so, yeah, that public use piece offering for moorage is identified.
Thank you. Councilor Race?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to go back to this Site 5 thing again. And I found, I think, what you were referring to, it's actually in the presentation that came out yesterday. It's not in the report. But I'm concerned, or not concerned, but I'm wondering about a comment or a question that Councillor Pettengill asked. The existing zoning in that presentation is shown as resource, and the proposal is to go to M1. And clearly, if we zoned at M1 and they came along and wanted to put the log sort there, we would have to rezone that site. But does it require rezoning with the resource zoning that's on it presently?
Yes, we can.
For council, staff's view is that based on the other facilities for log transfer site, and which includes skidways, barge loading, and dock, under the resource zone, forestry is allowed, but it does not include log sort operations or some of these other kind of major industrial infrastructure pieces that are already zoned either industrial 3 within the municipality or I-5 log sort operations. So there's a consistency piece for other similar facilities that already exist elsewhere in the municipality. So we would look to align.
So the long and the short of it is it's going to require a rezoning regardless, unless we try to craft one tonight, which I'm not suggesting. That's more or less the state of that?
That's correct.
And the second question is respect to, and I can't remember who made the comment, but the existing log sort site holders, they're an existing business, they're in effect grandfathered, presumably indefinitely, but somebody said, or until renewal. And I'm wondering if you could explain that. Is there some point when their grandfather status would run out because of a renewal of their license or an extension of their license or something like that?
Through to council, that's a question for the province, just in terms of those the continuation of those licenses. And I would have to get back to council just on whether or not some of those longstanding tenures just sort of end up getting renewed and continuing on without any break in the use. Typically, municipalities there's a local government and First Nations consultation and comment opportunity with new licenses. And that is not necessarily the case for these renewals unless the local government provides comment to the province that we would be interested in commenting on renewals over time. But yeah, we'd have to look at that renewal process very closely in terms of whether uses kind of technically pause and stop, or these 10 years just kind of are renewed by the province without further engagement.
Because the use presumably would continue, which I've always understood with zoning means that it's still grandfathered until I think it's something like a 6-month pause or something of that nature. And there might be a license renewal or a change in the status, just like there might be a change in a lease in a piece of property on land or a renewal of that lease. But if the use continued, then the zoning continues to be grandfathered. I think I'm correct in saying that. I'm looking for guidance.
That's correct. Yeah, under the Local Government Act, for a legally non-conforming use, it can continue until such time as it stops or pauses, and then it would not be considered to be a continuous use. And new regulations would then come into effect. And that's from the Local Government Act and Local Government standpoint. And I guess what I'm saying is with the province, I'm just not sure if in the eyes of the province through their licensing and tenuring, if there's a consideration of a sort of a pause in that use, or it's just sort of a continuous renewal. So I'd have to confirm on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. There's been an assertion, I think, if I understood that, where these proposed bylaws are not consistent with some new ongoing work DFO and others might be doing. And so setting that aside, because that's not complete yet, there's also been some discussion about whether or not what's proposed is consistent with current DFO regulations in terms of setbacks and so on and depths. And I think we had a bit of discussion about this at second reading. And I'm just wondering, Ms. McJanet, if you can clarify that we are consistent with the current DFO regulations on log sorts in what's proposed?
You bet. For clarity, the provisions in the M4 zone for water depths and 100-meter setback from fish habitat, those are mirroring guidelines and best practices that are highlighted for different aspects of log handling facilities within the province. And there's some differentiation between like the types of log handling, for example, kind of on water log storage versus more active types of log handling and heli drops and things like that. So there's a whole variety of guidelines and regulations. For the municipality, we ended up pulling in some of these two best management practice guidelines, and the municipality doesn't necessarily need to follow, like can sort of forge its own path in terms of local level regulation in a similar way that local governments were asked to meet or beat provincial riparian area regulations. So it's in a similar vein that we're looking at these best management practices based on kind of environmental review and engagement with stakeholders, have made proposal for these siting considerations and bringing those into regulation.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council?
I have one more question for clarity in terms of the differentiation between the M1 and the M2 zone. So recognizing that the M1 zone can allow for public boat launch as long as there is public access. Can there still be private operation for recreation or like boat rentals off of that dock or public launch? Or is that, as a term that we learned earlier today, winkled out because it's explicitly put into one zone and not into another?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, and if you think practically about how boat rentals and things like that kind of operate, and it sort of depends on like my expectation is that the actual storage of the gear and the rental gear would be happening on an upland as part of a private facility, and that renters would be paying that private company to rent gear and then walk down to a dock and utilize a dock. So long as the dock is providing public access, it would be aligned with the zoning. If access was cut off and it was for exclusive use of only those people that were paying for or renting gear, then that wouldn't be in the spirit or aligned with the community water access use that's set out in the M1 zone. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, that clarifies a lot. And then we just had another submission to the hearing email address that I just wanted to piggyback on that. And it was requesting where they could actually operate kind of a commercial operation off of commercial dock space or public loading. And my understanding is that that could be available on any sort of dock that is in the M2 zone in particular. Is that correct?
For clarity, the M2 zone does allow marine-oriented tourist and recreation uses. And so that's a use on the water. Within a marina context, there might be, just based on the marina in terms of some like parameters that the marina manager might put in place in terms of like hours or access or, other types of provisions of an owner or a leaseholder. But in terms of just the actual use, marine-oriented tourism is allowed within the P2 on the water.
Thank you.
So Janet, when for the M4 zone, if someone couldn't meet the setback requirements for the depth requirements, as in other zones, couldn't people ask for a variance?
For all of council, the way that it's set up currently in the M4 zone is that these are conditions of use as opposed to being highlighted as citing considerations, as you might otherwise sometimes see where there's citing of buildings and structures. That's a separate kind of provision within the zoning authority. So right now they're very much linked into the conditions of use, and as such, you can't vary use through a development permit, for example.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, you have a study that will come next around access and figuring out marine access points for our community. If that finds, that need access in the upper mountain compliant channel, would we not spot zone something within the P1 zone?
Absolutely, that's a possibility. So there's a couple of different ways to approach that based on more of a prescriptive or based on a marine access review. What would surface is, where are the best locations to designate and delineate sort of and provide some kind of public water access that has all the upland parking, associated parking provision, and that is a good fit. And that is not, for example, removing recently planted habitat compensation plantings, for example. So once a location was figured out within the zone, we can actually we can amend the zone to allow for community water access over a specific legal parcel. Or we can show that in a drawing or and be quite prescriptive about where that community access is to be located. That was part of the recommendation, was to take a more kind of careful and prescriptive approach for that upper Mamquam blind channel area to basically look at and then try and figure out where best to assign public water access.
Thanks. We have one more caller.
Mr. Rollins, you're up again. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's Dave Rollins of Blackmail Logging talking again. I was just, there's some questions over the water depths and that, and how they related back and forth to DFO guidance documents and such. And the most recent regional code of practice for reactivation, which is slightly different, but it's a bit of a guideline anyway, that Kofi and DFO have been working on for the last couple of years. My understanding is this is basically the near final draft that's sitting in Ottawa waiting for royal assent from the DFO there. But is regarding siting, it does mention a 20 meters if it's if at all possible. However, if there's been previous impacts from storage and there's a debris assessment tool type thing that a qualified professional must go through, but it recognizes the fact that these long time standing log storage and facilities do have impact, and there are bark accumulations and such under the water. So those ones that are have been used for perpetuity and are under the 20 meters in depth, that's acceptable by the new guidance document. So I've been on the coast for about 30 years and dealt with maybe 7 to 8 beach starts and probably more than that for log dumps and drop zones. And the standard of practice has always been on new areas was 15 meters for booms and 12 meters for camps. So, and this new document generated between Kofi and DFO, the point it was revisited was because of recent changes in the Fisheries Act. So they wanted to make sure that their guidance documents were consistent with the federal fishery guidelines in the act. So I think it just gives further, should be a further comfort level that the grandparenting of these existing facilities that are required for the sector in the Howe Sound should be recognized in any bylaw changes. That's about it.
Thanks very much.
No problem.
One more caller, Pete Bars. Pete, you are up next. If you could please state your name and address for the record. And you have 5 minutes to address council. Please go ahead. Hi, Pete, you're on mute.
There we are. Peter Bars. I work for BC Timber Sales. I live in Magnolia Crescent in Squamish, and I just wanted to add a few clarification points to some of the discussion just in the last little while. There was just some questions about engagement on the DFO standards and with stakeholders. And just for clarity, my understanding is that only stewardship groups were consulted in the early stages, and the DFO guidelines and other documents were used for reference. DFO was not directly consulted, and so I just wanted to clarify that the stakeholder consultation appears to have been fairly limited. And again, back to our letter, that I think there was a lot of information that could have been gained or can be gained still to reach out and talk to groups like Dave Rollins' group, who have a lot of experience with this, and directly with DFO, and to try to more closely align with the provincial and federal guidance documents with the bylaw. The concern is that, and it was just raised in the last comment, that there really is no room for variance once this is set. This is the standards are set, and you must be aligned with them. Whereas when you're working in industry and under a guidance document, that everything is very site specific, and there's some allowance for looking at site conditions and ensuring that you're protecting sites based on those site conditions, and not just a 100-meter number or a 20-meter number guiding all your actions. it's very site specific with professional biologists and others involved in these decisions and these reviews. So I just feel that the bylaw as it sits doesn't allow for that variance, doesn't and is not following known and accepted and long-term practices that are in place. So it's just a consideration in for council and this advice that we have to go back to the and do some additional consultation prior to moving ahead. Thank you very much.
We have no other hands at the moment.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any further clarifications, Mr. Bennett, that you made? Thank you. Now that I've heard from everyone on the speakers list, it is a requirement that I ask 3 times if there's anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. So for the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? So that would be star 3 on the telephone or a hand icon in WebEx in the participant panel. For the second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? And for the third and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Okay, seeing no further comments from the public. Don't see any hands from council. Please note that council members are not permitted to receive any further submission or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. So this means we can't speak to you out in the community or receive emails or phone calls on the bylaw until a decision on the bylaw has been made. Any and all communication from this point must be channeled to staff. If there are no further speakers, I declare the hearing closed. Thank you very much, everyone, for your submissions this evening. Very appreciative of that. All right, so council, we can entertain third reading. That is always an option. And so I'm on item 5A1 in our bylaw. This is District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw for the Oceanfront Amendments number 2796/2021. If someone wants to move third reading. Councilor Race moves third reading, seconded by Councilor Stoner. If you wish to speak to this, Councilor Race, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And my comments would really cover all 3 of the oceanfront bylaws. And I spoke at second reading and probably said more than I had to at second reading, but I think these are changes that will make what I thought was good zoning even better, and comes into also some more current current standards and goals and aspirations of the district and the community. So I think they will certainly improve the development of the oceanfront, and I'm happy to support all 3 of them.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Councilor Stoner?
Thank you. My comments will also go for all 3 of the bylaws that are in front of us this evening. I too will be supporting them. I think that this will advance. We knew that there was going to be shifts and changes to the zoning over time, just given the length over which they were being applied. And I think that this just brings some of those components up to speed with where it is that we are today and where we want to see our community going. In particular, the dedication of public roads, increase in employment space, and facilitating the mass timber construction, I think are all really positive for our community. These are not resulting in an increase in density with the exception of Block B, which is specifically to increase employment space and puts a cap on residential. And so I'm comfortable with moving all those forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stoner. Any further comments? Councilor Pango?
Yeah, thanks. I will be supporting this as well. I think just reflecting on this whole thing, I know Oceanfront has been a long process and there's still some pieces to go. I do think this is a worthwhile trade-off. It is sort of a bit challenging seeing how fast the information about the climate emergency is evolving, that we can't put more drastic changes in sooner. But I, understand there's a bit of a balance there. It also makes me think that we should maybe review our standards for strata roads going forward in the future. But given where we are, I think there are some very significant improvements in what's proposed, and I'm happy to support them.
Thank you, Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. I too will be speaking on the next three items. Squamish has been waiting for this oceanfront project to move forward for a long time, and this latest move, I think, improves the project and gets it going, which is a long time in coming. So I support all three. Thank you.
Councillor Herford, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be speaking to all three, and I'll be supporting. I appreciate how these adjustments are bringing the project in line with some of our more recent policies, and I think it's appropriate at this time. And as stated before me, we're all looking forward to this coming to fruition over the next little while. So happy to support. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. There are, as Councillor Pettingill referred to, some pieces to go, including the important marine employment precinct. And there will be challenges there and elsewhere with this large project. But it's evident to me that there is a very good collaborative relationship with the project proponents and our staff. And we also heard Carlos Savarchi referred to new communications platforms. And so I think that there is an evident also an openness to the community in addressing the many challenges and demands that are going to be inherent, have been inherent in a large, complex, but important project. I'll be supporting all three bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question on bylaw 2796, 2021, be given third reading.
John disappeared. Can you ask him to?
So hold on a second.
To
Missing Councillor French. Councillor French, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I've turned off my video because I'm lagging so significantly. I don't have anything to add.
Yep, so I know you're voting in favor, so if you decide suddenly you don't, just say nay when I call the question. So on Districts of Squamish Amendment Bylaw 2796, 2021, be given third reading. Any opposed? Motion carries. So 5A2, District of Squamish zoning bylaw, Oceanfront amendments number 2797, be given third reading. This is the zoning bylaw. Someone want to move that? By Councillor Herford, second by Councillor Grace. Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, that District of Squamish Phase Development Agreement Bylaw, Amendment Bylaw number 2812, 2021, to give in third reading, and that prior to adoption, the following items be completed. Approval of the Inspector of Municipalities and completion of the dedication of new district-owned roads on the Oceanfront Peninsula. I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We can also entertain third reading on District of Squamish zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw for the university definition and Amblepath Strata Lot 1 use clarification number 2808, 2021. Anyone would like to move third reading? That is moved by Councillor Grace, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments on this particular bylaw? Councillor Grace.
Just briefly, I think this this bylaw adds important clarity to these two sites. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I too will be supporting this bylaw as I think it brings better alignment of our zoning definitions with the OCP and Schedule P, particularly the sub-area plan. And so happy to support third reading at this time.
Thank you. Any further comments? With my colleagues, I think it brings additional clarity, which is what we've been working towards in our zoning bylaw rewrite for each phase of this process. So I'm happy to support this. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, tonight, we can consider third reading of District of Squamish zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw for zoning zones number 2771, 2020. Council can also defer third reading if they would like some more time to contemplate the submissions and what they heard tonight. It is at your discretion. Okay,
I am prepared to move third reading.
I'll second that for the discussion. Go ahead if you'd like to speak to it.
Yes, thanks. Heard a lot of feedback, which I appreciate, and I am inclined to support this. I think, you know, a couple of the key things for me are, you know, I do think this does represent a shift to focusing on ecological importance, and I think that's part of where some of the tension is. But I also, you know, appreciate that existing uses are essentially protected through this, and so it may constrain somewhat new uses and put a bit more of an environmental focus on them. But I think that's entirely appropriate, especially in World Oceans Week and the presentations I've seen there. And I think, you know, we understand that with the west side of Howe Sound, a zoning is going to be required regardless. And so no matter what we do, I think there's more work to be done. And so I don't see an issue with proceeding there. My perception of the upper Mamcombe Blind Channel is that, you know, everything we're proposing does still allow access. It limits it, it constrains it a little bit, so it's not overwhelmed the area, but it still does permit, especially personal like kayaks and canoes and so on, and allows us to continue mitigation. But we also have further studies, and we can always adjust these things. People can use temporary use permits, but again, existing use is already permitted. So I think, you know, I hear some of the concerns, but I think there is good protection from all existing business, and it moves us in the direction I think we want to go. And I think more generally, there has been previously a couple areas of this bylaw I've been concerned about. So I'll have to watch those carefully. But I think overall, it really does establish a much better framework for our marine use and sets us up for defining better in the next steps that community access piece and enhancing that. So I am inclined to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. The raise.
Thank you. I'm going to propose an amendment to amend bylaw 2771 Schedule A overview map and map sheet 5 to maintain zoning of the upper Mamcram Blind Channel aquatic water lots as I1 zone bracket light industrial. If it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
That wishes to second that. That is seconded by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. So my reason for doing this is just to maintain the status quo, to allow some of these thoughts and proposals that came to us tonight and have come to me relatively recently, and maybe to others as well. But Can't hear
Councilor
me?
Ray? Can I just get you to hold for a second? There's a procedural question that our corporate officer is addressing.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. That's not an amendment, that's not an amendment that can happen at third, so that's gonna have to be, roll back, rescind second, give an amended second.
Okay, so Councilor Race, that's not an amendment. You can make it third reading. You would have to rescind second reading. We would have to amend second reading as you've indicated, and then we would have to hold another public hearing.
Oh. So when I was looking for alternatives or options, this is what showed up on the presentation. And so I misunderstood. In that case, speaking to the motion on the floor, I will not be supporting it. Unfortunately, the whole bylaw, I guess, is caught by this one little area. But I think there is more work to do in that particular area. I'm satisfied that the comments, and there's merit, I'm sure, to the comments made about Site 5 on the west side of the Howe Sound. But if it has to be rezoned regardless for that use, that doesn't seem to me a reason to hold up the bylaw. But the upper blind channel does seem to me to be a concern relatively recently expressed, at least as far as I've heard. And if we go ahead and zone it P3 or P4 rather, it may be difficult to undo that. And so there is an issue of tourism infrastructure involved in that and the potential for it. And I think that's something that should be fleshed out. So I will not be supporting the bylaw as it is presently written.
All right, so just for clarity, the amendment that Councilor Ray's proposed was withdrawn. And he was just speaking to the main motion, which was to give third reading, which he opposed. So I just want to make that very clear for everyone that the amendment is no longer. Does anyone else want to speak to the motion on the floor, which is to give third reading to marine zone updates? Councilor French.
Thank you, Chair. I heard strong feedback the last couple of days and up into today that the P3 designation for the Malcolm Blind Channel Western Shore, the upper reaches, is too restrictive for an area that's highly disturbed by decades of industrial activity. And I believe the area above Highway 99, the bridge over the Malcolm Blind Channel, is better zoned to allow for recreation and tourism-oriented uses on the Western Shore. The concerns also expressed by the forest industry are giving me pause. At this point, I feel that the marine zoning bylaw needs to be reworked to address the two areas of concern that we've heard about. I will not be supporting third reading.
Councilor Stoner.
I was hoping to have a bit more time to consider the amount of feedback that we received both this evening in public hearing and in written prior to the public hearing before considering third reading. But given that we are here with a motion on the floor, I will also not be supporting third reading at this time. I do not have significant concerns around the P4 component in the upper Malcolm Blind Channel. I think we've spoken about this for a long time. I think that the P4 designation is more aligned than what the current light industrial zoning is with the OCP alignment. And I don't think it precludes future spot zoning once we have more information on where appropriate public access to the waterway would be. So that's not where my concern lies. My concern lies predominantly with the M4 zone and the mixed feedback that we're getting in terms of alignment, particularly with DFO best practice. And I appreciate the amount of work that has gone in to try and develop the conditions of use of that zone. But I am not satisfied without further analysis into those best management practices, which my understanding are from 2003. And there's currently a very live active update of them that I would like to see a bit more engagement specifically with DFO and Flynn Row and the forestry industry on those particular setbacks specifically because they can't be varied. So that's where my biggest hesitation comes in this evening. So for that, I will not be supporting third reading at this time.
So I'm just going to insert another procedural reminder here to council that if you reject third reading, it all dies. The whole thing goes back to the beginning. So if you don't want to do that, then at some point, someone, I might do this myself, depending on the rest of the comments I hear, would move an amendment to rescind second reading and bring it back for an amended second reading at a future meeting. So let's not forget the procedural importance of where we're at in this process. Are there further comments on this bylaw? Councilor.
Thank you. With the amount of correspondence we received on this, and quite late in the game, I might add, the sort of the late game spike in public engagement, I guess is what I would brand that as generally, does give me some pause. And with the amount of correspondence we received over the last, well, even today, I would much prefer to either defer or to rescind second reading. So but given where we're at with this, at this procedural point, I'm left in a bit of a quandary what to do, because I don't want to kill all the great work that has happened over the vast majority of this project. So I'll continue to listen to the rest of my colleagues, but that's where I'm at currently.
Councilor Anderson, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you. I will not be supporting the motion on the floor put forward by Councillor Pettingill. At this late hour, I would prefer to defer consideration of third reading, but I would not be supporting the package anyway and I will only elaborate just briefly. My chief concern is with the M4 zoning. This is what has biggest impact on our stakeholders. I have been a deckhand on the local tugboats. I've also worked at Woodfibre. I visited just about every one of the M4 proposed sites. And I note there is persistent confusion regarding the best management practices right up until right up through the evening. The impacts are severe. This is due to the circumstances. There are 20 hectares of log storage area that are directly affected by the new standards that are proposed by the district. And that includes the setbacks and the water depth. These need to be looked at in detail in collaboration with the suite of professionals that Dave Southam has offered are available. The two areas comprising 20 hectares are their history upon renewal, because they just wouldn't stand the new more stringent 100-meter setback and 20-meter water depths, which are not in guidelines for log storage, and that's black and white. And so the impacts are severe, and the offer is there to work with a team from industry, Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And by the way, the new package that is under review does not concern log storage. It only concerns log dumps. But I also see that the M4 zoning is not a great fit for Site 5 anyway, due to some wording in there that I think is unnecessary. And so I think that this component in particular needs so much work and further consultation that I would not be willing to proceed with the package. With respect to M1 applying to BC timber sales, I don't see why we would do this, given the extra costs and onerous process that we would be putting on them to do that rezoning. The existing zoning, resource zoning, is just fine in place as it is. I don't see any urgency to change anything until we're ready, and we don't have a zone that properly fits this site and what it's going to be for. With respect to P4 application to the upper blind channel, I won't say too much more here, but I agree with Councillor Race that the I1 zoning in place now is not problematic, and we've had a number of planning work behind us, a lot of community investment in those planning processes over from 1990s through to just short of 10 years ago. And those people that put time into those processes. I think we can do more than just cite those plans. We can explain why we want to change them. And I think that staff need to do more on that. I think that, well, I'll just leave it at that. The impacts, particularly on the forest industry, have me most concerned, so I would not be willing to proceed with this package.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So I'd like to move an amendment
Or withdraw.
So I can ask the mover and seconder to withdraw the motion based on the feedback you've heard, because I'm not sure that we want to kill this bylaw in its entirety. And if they're not willing to do that, then I would like to propose an amendment. Topanga?
Hearing the discussion, I guess I will move to withdraw. Procedural, will I have an opportunity to speak to why I'm making this decision? Or I just make that motion?
I think any decision to withdraw is because you've heard the motion's going to fail, and we would kill this bylaw. I'm not sure that there's another reason that you would withdraw the motion.
Okay, fair enough. So I will move to withdraw.
Is that all right with the seconder? Oh yeah, it was me. Totally fine with me. So I'd like to move that we rescind second reading given May 18th, and that staff bring back second reading for consideration. Based on the comments I've heard, the only change I want to see is to the M4, that staff bring back second reading with any changes considered for the M4 zone based on feedback from the forestry industry and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I believe, so that is my motion, and I'll speak to it in a second. Second by Councilor Strata. But the reason I'm proposing this change is that I believe with further engagement with the forestry industry, we can figure out a solution for the M4 zone that respects existing tenures, that manages the balance between the environment and the needs for log storage for new log storage sites and log dumps, and that the discussion with BC timber supply is an ongoing conversation to figure out what the best zone is for that area. And so I don't see that as an issue. It didn't apply within the resource zone. It doesn't apply in the M1 zone or the M4 zone. So that is an ongoing conversation, which our staff have been working with BCTS on an ongoing basis in a collaborative conversation. I don't think that's going to stop. I believe the majority of council is okay with the P4 zoning based on the comments I heard, knowing that we're going to do a marine access study following this zoning. That's our next priority item, as well as a dredging plan. And between those two things, we develop much more clarity about where that access should be, how it should be built, where it should be built, where the upland supports are for those access. And that will require lots of engagement, and providing the P4 zoning at this point doesn't freeze anything. It allows people to continue to do what they're doing. It gives us some more time to talk about access more broadly. I think there were a lot of overstatements shared this evening, and we do change zoning. It's not written in stone, but I think this better aligns with our intent than the I zoning, the industrial zoning, and provides for the flexibility we need to provide access in a planned and controlled way that meets the needs of tourism operators and the public and visitors alike. So I don't see that as a stumbling block. I think the rest of this bylaw is really well written around the other zones that staff have developed for our waterways. So I think with some additional consultation with the forestry industry, we do find it a little bit rich that the province has stood up tonight after they have been engaged since the beginning to say that more engagement is needed. Our staff have been engaging with the province on this bylaw for quite some time. So I just want to say that that certainly we can engage with industry a bit more. The province, if they needed to be at the table, probably should have been at the table before tonight with the comments that they shared with us. So that I find frustrating. We did our work, we were working with staff at the province, and we didn't get the feedback we needed until this evening. So with that, I will open up the floor to other comments. Councilor John.
I won't go on too long, but I will say that I will be supporting this motion. I think it falls better in line with my previous comments. As I mentioned, M4 is really the area that I had the most concern about, and I think just a little bit more engagement on those depths and the 100-meter setback is warranted, especially with DFO and the industry. I do want to reiterate, I'm looking at a 6-page engagement and referral log that dates back to the fall of 2019. The province is on there, the feds are on there, and BC Timber Supplies sales is on there. So to say that that engagement hasn't been done, I think is unfair to our staff and to the process that has been very public up until now. But I am willing to delay that reading just a little bit more to make sure that those numbers are correct. I have no concerns about the west side of Howe Sound being rezoned to M1 at this point. As the mayor mentioned and as staff clarified a number of times, that rezoning is required one way or another. And so I don't think that changes the ongoing discussion that is happening on that site in particular. And I don't have any interest in pre-zoning it ahead of the federal or provincial requirements that that zone would, or that development would need to meet. So happy to support the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Further comments? Councilor Anderson?
Yes, thank you. I will only reluctantly support the motion on the floor because I do see that there's opportunities for not only the upper blind channel to go through yet further review, as well as Mr. Williams and his concerns. I think there's opportunities for that area too. The door is always open for a rezoning application. And there could be good consideration, a process for Mr. Williams' business in future there. As regards BC Timber Sales, I know it's going to be frustrating and it is extra costs to go through this from an M1 now to a new as yet undefined zone, which will be necessary because we don't have the tools right now. But I would like to speak to engagement. One of the concerns that's raised by the Chamber of Commerce, and it's raised not only by the Chamber of Commerce, I've raised it myself, is that we are doing zoning in the wrong order here. We should, that is, where the priorities of the Marine Action Strategy include zoning, but there's also governance, there's also assessment, there's also engagement. Lots of it is promised, and we haven't gone there yet. We've had lots of challenges, various factors, but this matter of how you consult with the forest industry, well, the forest industry has a dedicated, assigned 2 persons on the Squamish Estuary Management Committee. And that's the only seats at the table the forest industry has had since 15, 20 years ago. And that those types of forums need to be revitalized so that you have ongoing platform with the forest industry at the seat of the table. This would facilitate engagement with the industry. It's difficult. They're all small businesses. They're all busy. And the ministry itself is challenged with staffing and workload and this sort of thing. But we should be addressing governance. It would be much easier to go through what we're doing now had that already been in place, that platform that we need, and we know that we need it, and we're looking forward to implementing it. Now, also with respect to engagement, staff are citing Ocean Watch publications and are in the presentation tonight. There's 2 maps from the David Suzuki Foundation Conservation Assessment Process. First of all, the Ocean Watch. The Ocean Watch authors admit themselves a, quote, dearth of information about log handling. And it appears that we don't understand what we need to understand. And they promise to different stakeholders, if you're involved in the Howe Sound Community Forum and these types of forums, they're admitting this. They need to do better next time, and there will likely be a 3rd edition. But the Ocean Watch publication should not be cited as an authority, and even less so, the David Suzuki Foundation's process, they are explicit in that their values that they're concerned with are ecological and cultural, and they're explicit that their values that they're concerned with do not include economic or social. They spell this out. The maps that they provided and that we are using, and we shouldn't be, are out of date. So I think that our engagement process in something as complex as marine planning we need to take a step back and look at the marine action strategy and some of those other initiatives in really all 4 of the focus areas and see where we need to be and where we need to go. There's persistent confusion about these best management practices, and the slide that shows from that guidebook, the one that's not marked is the one that applies. It's S6, but that's going into detail. It's late in the evening. But I think we really need to look at what our priorities are in implementing the Marine Action Strategy. And as I agree with the Chamber of Commerce that it was too early to proceed with zoning, we needed to do more assessment, analysis, and engagement, and put together the platforms in order to do this properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill?
Yes, thank you. I will be supporting this. I think mentioned some of the reasons, some of my thoughts around this whole topic earlier, but just want to highlight again, we talked about it earlier with the phase 3 of the zoning bylaw update, that we're seeing these as incremental processes, ongoing, sort of never ending, constant improvement. And so that's part of how I am seeing this. And I feel like a lot of engagement, I don't just feel like a lot of engagement was done. When I look at the reports, you can see the amount of engagement was done. And so I'm fairly comfortable with that. The one thing I wanted to clarify and it jumped out at me from staff is that we are referring to some of the existing DFO standards, but our goal was not with this to replicate those standards. We understand that ecological importance and values are shifting. And so in some degrees, we maybe want to exceed those, and that would apply to new operations. And so as staff goes back to look at this, I want to make sure, from my perspective, the target is not to mirror the DFO guidelines, but to use those as input, but to not be afraid to really consider those ecological pieces and to step a bit further and have a really high standard here. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to extend. Seconded by Council. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Hurst. Any opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Race.
Yeah, thank you. I'll also support the motion. In my discussions with some of the people in the tourism industry, one of their concerns with respect to the proposed rezoning of the Upper Blind Channel to P4 was that once you zone it for that type of zoning, it's very difficult to undo. And I think that's a fairly accurate concern. It's hard to unpark a park or something like that. So I think we have to remember, based on what we've said tonight, that we are prepared as a council to consider, in effect, changing some of that P4 zoning, if it eventually goes that way, to consider some of the infrastructure requests that might come along. And so we will be, in effect, taking it back if we get to that point and decide to do that. We will be taking it back from a P4 zoning. And we'll just have to remember tonight, and that's what we propose to do, and that's why we want to leave it as P4. So I will support this resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this resolution. I think at this point, this is our path forward. The upper blind channel is, I think the zoning proposed here will does align with what our intent is for that area. But I do acknowledge that further work is done, and staff has as well this evening, that the further work is needed to figure out the access question, and we'll need to come back and potentially spot zone a piece of the of this or something in the entirety, depending on what action's needed there. So I'm comfortable with that this is ongoing work, and I do think that the further refinement of these regulations around the log processing is it's worthwhile to go back and revisit. So I'll be supporting. Thank you.
Councillor French, did you wish to speak to this?
Yes, please, and thank you for checking in. I will be supporting the motion, and I'm happy that we're going back to second reading so that we can revisit. And I do feel that the upper blind channel needs additional work in addition to addressing the forestry concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson, I saw your hand again.
Yes, I'm sorry to indulge you all again, but I just feel it is necessary to point out what Dave Southam has raised, and that is the lack of engagement with First Nations. We have 7 First Nations in this corridor with a stake in the Squamish waterfront, and each of them has a business arm with a stake in the Squamish waterfront, and we have only consulted with one, the Squamish Nation. I think that it is good to see the flurry of activity, because the sports industry is if you like, and I hope they'll keep at it, but it is also their responsibility to come forward. But we have to recognize the challenges that they have. But we must also recognize that it is a First Nations dominated industry, and we have not paid attention to identifying them properly as stakeholders on the Squamish waterfront. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any further hands. I'm seeing a hand. Councillor Fenner.
Yes, just a procedural clarification. With the motion that's on the floor, assuming it gets support, staff would come back with something that adjusts possibly the M4 zone, but not the upper Mamcom blind channel, unless someone makes an amendment. Is that correct?
Correct. My motion was to focus on the M4 consultation. Everything else stands. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. McJanet, do you have what you need now that the motion's been voted on?
Hi, Council. Yes, that was clear to me that the motion is to rescind second reading and bring it back for a reconsideration based on engagement with the forest industry, and that the P4 zoning as it stands in the bylaw is okay to maintain for this time when we bring it back to council.
Thank you. and an ongoing conversation with BCTS on that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Big thank you tonight to our staff who supported us, and there were new staff training tonight, so this is a big night to be trained on this process. So thank you to the public who participated in all three of our public hearings, and thank you, Council, for your deliberations. And we'll see you next time. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.